I don't understand. If anything, the brownie was a spy for Vance's family, not the Faeries. I know for a fact Quentin saved Vance from attempts on his life at least 4 times when he was a teenager. He could run circles around most human bodyguards, but I swear he never used magic. Not when I saw, anyway. Fairies have their own rules, I said. Their own morals. They put their own species first, no matter what. In their realms, humans can legally be tortured and killed, and nobody would bat an eyelid. In this realm, they're not allowed to kill people, but the sentiment is still there. And apparently, being loyal friends of a human family isn't enough not to betray their secrets to our enemies while living here and pretending to be on our side. Think of how many times he could have used that healing power to save lives. All the mages who died in the last 3 generations. Betraying Vance and me was the least of his crimes. Drake looked down. I don't know. It seems kinda unlikely that Vance's parents would have kept him around if they knew he was spying for the Faeries. Yeah, I'd like an explanation, but he's buggered off to God knows where and left us in the lurch. Probably back to Faerie. They're all the same. Lying, evil bastards. Too late, my gaze connected with Roseanne, who just leaned in through the half-open door. Hurt flashed in her eyes as she ran away down the corridor. And now I've insulted our half-blood guest. I leaned my head against the wall. Absolutely fucktacular. Ivy, chill, said Drake. If you need to punch someone, I'll join you for training. I wouldn't mind that, actually. But someone attacked Wanda right outside the manor. What if they're still here? Then we'll start an unofficial patrol. Nobody else gets attacked on my watch. I'll cover one side of the house, you take the other. My arms dropped to my sides. All right. At least I'd feel less useless, even though my blood had probably saved Wanda's life. But it had been Quentin who'd brought her back from the brink of death. Maybe it wasn't the act of a traitor. But why spare her, and not anyone else who'd nearly died in the last few decades? He'd lived through the invasion. More than 100 mages had died in the fighting, and others had been killed when the invaders had hunted down the safe houses, where the more vulnerable mages and their children had been sheltering. Quentin might not have actively been involved in the invasion, but he'd let it happen. When we'd covered the entire perimeter of the house and grounds, I followed the lawn back to the manor. The blood in the alley had been cleaned up, but faint traces of blue light remained. Fairy magic. I followed the trail. It led down the alley alongside the manor, not inside the grounds, and ended at the field where I'd crossed into the Grey Vale that morning. Shit. The enemy might still be here. What if something had followed me out of the Grey Vale? Something worse than the hellhounds. I couldn't see anything weird, aside from the magic, but nothing was a simple coincidence when it came to the Faeries. As I headed back to the manor, I spotted movement inside the conservatory. Vance. I hurried up the steps to meet him as he opened the glass door. Did you find him? I asked.
No. Either he's left the manor, or he's using some kind of magic to conceal himself.
You don't think he's working against us, do you? He wouldn't have saved Wanda's life otherwise.
No,
said Vance.
The wards keep out anyone intending harm, and half the doors are laced with iron. Quentin knows that.
But a spy. How could you have lived in the same house and not known how powerful his magic was?
Vance's brows shot up. Doesn't your sword react to fairy magic?
He never used magic at all, did he? He blindsided both of us.
You're right.
He closed his eyes and took in a breath, as though trying to calm himself down.
Wanda is fine, for now. Quentin isn't here, so I'll need to assign someone else to keep an eye on Roseanne while we try to determine what attacked Wanda. The question is, did they mean to attack Wanda, or were they coming for Roseanne instead?
Probably our half-blood friend. I shrugged. I don't know what to do. Keeping her here puts a target on everyone's heads. It's unfair to throw her to the wolves, too. She already said no to the chief. Right now, I don't even know where she is. I kind of insulted all fairies, and she overheard me.
I don't blame you.
He wrapped his arms around me.
I'm sorry for disappearing right after you gave your blood to Wanda.
It's fine. You needed to find our spy. I rested my head against his chest. The comfort of his embrace made me want to curl up and go to sleep. I can't believe it. You don't think he went to Faerie, do you? Can't you use a tracking spell?
I didn't see him leave the manor, but it's a possibility.
Anger burned in his grey eyes, and his grip went rough before he let go. I caught a glimpse of black scales on his hands.
He had full access to all of our resources. Witch spells, weapons, even our strategies. If he is an enemy...
He saved Wanda. But what about all the times we nearly died on missions? I can't believe he's lived here for so many years and never met someone in a near-death state before. That's at least one war he's lived through.
Yes, but he's also been confined to the manor the entire time, said Vance. Perhaps his instructions were specific.
Considering they came from fairies, they probably were, I muttered. Like, you're permitted to use your healing power only on members of the Colton family while at the manor on a Tuesday afternoon. Vance considered this.
Actually, I think Wanda is a distant relation of mine. Quite a few of the majors are. The older families, that is. We might be second cousins a few times removed.
Huh. You learn something new every day. I paused. Don't tell anyone, but I found a trail from the place Wanda was attacked, and it led to the field behind the manor. The same place I last went to Faerie. To the Grey Vale. For all I know, I brought the enemy right here.
You didn't. I was watching the whole time when you came back from Faerie. I only saw the Hellhound before it ran away. Whatever attacked Wanda, it didn't follow you.
I wasn't convinced. And if it was Glamad?
Still not your fault.
Whatever the cause, Wanda had damn near died. Until we could determine who her attacker was and where they came from. No more trips into Faerie for me. Chapter 9. My phone buzzed aggressively from the bedside table, waking me from sleep. I glared at it. The buzzing continued, but Vance didn't stir. He'd been restless all night, probably worried about Wanda and how Quentin was still AWOL, and I didn't have the heart to wake him up and make him help me deal with whoever was hounding me at this ungodly hour. I threw on a dressing gown and slippers before carefully pushing open the glass doors to the balcony and stepping outside with the phone pressed to my ear. "What now, Larson?" I hissed.
"There's been another attack similar to Liam's death."
I cursed under my breath. "When?"
"About midnight, in the middle of Mercenary District. 3 victims with the same injuries as Liam had."
"One of the majors was attacked yesterday too," I said. "Can't you assign someone else?"
"You agreed to do this job for me," said Larson. "Find Liam's killer. Don't think I didn't hear about that half-blood."
"You have people spying on me? Seriously?" I nearly hung up.
"The will has not yet been found. Liam's possessions
will stay where they are until someone finds it. Don't pretend you didn't give the go-ahead to your mercs to let them raid his flat, Larson."
"Liam left no instructions behind. I heard you decided to go chasing after a half-blood instead of catching Liam's attacker before they targeted someone else.
Don't talk crap, I snapped. You've no idea how close a call we had. Unless you'd like to pretend you even knew the names of the mercs who died without having to look in your files. Silence. A guilty silence, at least. Fine, I'll be there later this morning. I clicked off the phone, cursing again when I saw the time. 5:30. Bastard. If the attack had been last night, there was no reason for him to call me this early. The attacker would be long gone. I found Vance sitting up, his hair rumpled from sleep.
I heard you yelling.
Sorry, it was Larson again. I kicked off my slippers and slid into the bed beside him. He called me early because he's a dick. Another mercenary, more than one, by the sound of it, was killed in Merc District. Larson thinks it's the same killer, but it might not be.
It seems worth looking into.
But what about Roseanne? We can't leave her here alone, especially with Quentin missing. She'll wake up and realize you locked her door at some point. I didn't like the idea of locking her into her room at night, but it was that or let an as-yet not quite trustworthy half-fairy run amok through the manor all night. After Quentin's betrayal, I'd take no chances. Wanda's close call had shaken me. What was the use in having magic if I couldn't use it to defend my friends? Whenever I looked away, the enemy struck. I was responsible for Roseanne's well-being, but how far would I go to protect someone I didn't know, didn't even trust, when the enemy might have targeted my friends because of her presence here? But then, where does that leave the attacks in Mercenary District? That's nowhere near the manor. It might not be connected to her at all. Or maybe someone was trying to cover their tracks.
I'll ask another mage to water. Or move her to another safe house. It'll be fine.
Is it bad that I hope an estranged relative of Roseanne's shows up and takes her off our hands?
No. I was just hoping the same thing.
He laughed quietly. Unless you hired her as your new household staff. His smile disappeared as swiftly as it had arrived. Sorry. I never trusted Quentin, but I know he lived here forever.
Sarah adored him. I don't understand why he would have left us to the She in the invasion, knowing they were coming. He must have known.
He might have. We haven't heard his side of the story yet. Though hell if I didn't want to wring his neck until the truth spilled out. Abandoning Vance's family to death at the hands of the She made it pretty damn clear where his loyalties lay.
No, we haven't.
He exhaled in a sigh.
I'll worry about Quentin when we find him. I can't afford to run after him all day, not when he's left the manor in all likelihood.
You think he's gone back to Faerie? I thought brownies were tied to the house they'd chosen to serve.
In a manner of speaking. If the Colton family weren't his only masters,
then he'll have gone to the others. My nails bit into my palms. Dick.
I feel like I should have known. He was always too efficient. He did the jobs of a dozen people. We've never had the need to hire other household staff here, since he came to serve my grandfather.
The grandfather who married a shifter?
Yes.
He knew. But why not tell his children the truth? Okay, so Vance's family had suffered some major upheavals, but keeping a spy in the house was a freaking big oversight. Has he definitely always been in the house?
As far as I know.
He frowned.
If he's been taking secret trips into Faerie, he's hidden them well. There was a time when I was a child, when he had to act as a 24-hour bodyguard for myself in the manor. He wouldn't have had time to spy for anyone else.
What? You mean when assassins were coming after you? The stories, and I hadn't even heard all of them, were enough to make me glad I hadn't been born into the mages. It wouldn't make sense for him to defend you if he was secretly working against you.
No, it wouldn't.
Vance stood.
I need to talk to the other mages and see who's willing to take guard duty today. Then we'll go and see Larson.
I yawned. I want coffee and something to eat first.
I'm afraid Quentin won't be able to make you those pancakes you like anymore.
No worries. I prefer your cooking anyway. I'd wanted to make him smile. It worked.
We should leave soon, before Roseanne wakes up.
20 minutes and a stack of toast and coffee later, I fetched my sword while Vance called to Drake to speak to us in the weapons room.
We need someone to keep an eye on Roseanne today,
said Vance.
Ivy and I have something important to see to, but it's possible the attackers might come back.
Another mercenary was killed, I explained. We need to check it out and see if it's the same creature which attacked Wanda, but I'm not taking our half-fairy friend along with us.
I'll watch her, said Drake, cracking his knuckles. She won't get away while I'm here.
There are monsters coming after her.
I've watched Vance's back for years. Nothing I can't handle.
He was probably right, but I didn't want anyone else getting hurt while we were gone. Not when the attackers must know Roseanne was here. For all I knew, someone had created a diversion on purpose. Watch for Quentin, I warned him. He might not be on our side.
I'm on it. Don't worry,
said Drake, conjuring up a flame in each hand. Hope so.
Don't worry,
said Vance as we left the weapons room.
He's actually surprisingly good at bodyguard duty, even if he does get distracted easily. I can't count the number of times he's saved my neck.
I know. You gave me enough warning before I moved in here.
You don't regret that choice?
His tone was light, but there was a note underneath that sounded a little cautious. Oh, no. I'd have to be mad to miss out on the scheming and murder and blackmail. I smiled at him. We'll find Quentin and get the truth out of him. It'll be fine.
Yes, we will. I hope Roseanne doesn't make too much trouble while we're gone.
I think she hates me after yesterday, I said as we walked to the door. She heard me muttering about Quentin and assumed I hated all fairies the same. Which I don't. I'm just having a hard time seeing the good side of any I've interacted with lately.
I don't fault you for that, said Vance. I was never raised to hate fairies, but that's largely down to my parents' trust of Quentin. I didn't question it, nor why he'd serve humans when most of his species belonged to fairy nobles in the summer court.
Did he ever speak to you about the fairies? I asked, curious.
Yes, but only when I asked. I remember he told me a little about the summer court, but I never had the impression he spent a great deal of time there.
I get that fairy vows are binding, but he must understand he betrayed your trust. He's spent enough time around humans to know how we look at things like that. Vance paused.
He has. But fairies have a habit of holding on to old beliefs. Look at the half-bloods. They've mostly been brought up to believe this realm is their home, yet they still aspire to go back to Faerie.
Yeah, good point. I sighed. All right, time to see some more dead bodies. Mercenary District was a warren of old tower blocks, mostly abandoned to disrepair at the far end of the city centre. Some had once been overpriced student housing. Others had been for wealthy businessmen and women who commuted into the city. Now, all had been abandoned, as the rest of the town centre was trampled flat, and all things dark and nasty had moved into the gaps. Though the canal was no longer dammed with a huge troll's nest, the murky water emitted a foul smell, which followed us along the concrete walkway. How are we meant to find a specific dead body here? I shook my head at the canal, where a suspiciously human-like arm protruded limply from a stack of discarded old junk. Clawed beasts hid in the dark here, and disappearances were commonplace. I wouldn't know where to look if Lawson hadn't given me directions to a block of flats near to the place Isabel and I had once come to exorcise a ghost. If ever a place looked haunted, this one did. We tracked down the right tower block, and I rang the buzzer outside, while Vance checked for potential hidden threats. A middle-aged, balding man answered the door. "Come to see the bodies?" He grinned, showing gaps between crooked teeth, and invited Vance and me into the building. "Lawson said we weren't to bury them until they'd been identified. Since there's loads of nasties here which eat human flesh, I locked them in the basement." Yay! Going underground in Mercenary District. Fun times. The basement was at the foot of a set of rickety stairs. I held my sword to light the way, prompting a bemused look from the balding man. "Pretty sword, that. Where'd you get it?" "You'd never believe me if I told you." He laughed, the sound harsh in the unlit stairway. "I believe anything these days. Nasty business, these bodies. Can't think why Lawson wanted to keep them." "We think there's an unidentified monster running around." "Might be one down here." I stopped. He laughed again. "Lead the way," said Vance. Irritation rolled off him, and the old merc stopped laughing. "I mean no disrespect, Mage Lord. Your companion here's a little jumpy." "Yeah, I've been known to accidentally stab people when I'm nervous." True, actually, though it was more likely to be fairies than humans. We walked the rest of the way into the basement in silence. The bodies had been savaged. Long claw marks were carved into their skin, and I didn't need to look close to know their organs had been removed. Blood stained the concrete floor. I swallowed bile and looked away. "Yeah, looks the same as the other death. Did anyone witness the attack, or hear anything?" "Heard a weird noise outside. Like a bird, but really loud. About 3 a.m, this was. Then I heard screaming. By the time I came downstairs, they were dead." "Where'd they live, anyway?" "Bottom floor, right by the canal. Poor sods." He gave a crooked grin in the dark. "All single, no kids. More loot for the rest of us." "Unless the monster gets you next," I muttered. "Ain't no shortage of monsters here," he said. "Don't get what's so special about these ones." "The victim's organs have all been removed," I said. "It's not exactly like a usual predator's killing. It can't be a sacrifice, not without a summoning circle. Do you know any creatures which eat human organs and have a taste for mercenary?" "No." He looked a little frightened now. "I plan to move away from this shithole next year. No more monsters, no more blasted canal." "You'd be lucky to live that long." I moved closer to the bodies. "I'm going to use tracking spells." Though I didn't hold out much hope after last time. I put on my professional face as I set up the tracking spell overlapping with the body, so I didn't have to touch its cold, waxy-appearing face. Again, the spell faded out. When I tried one on the second body, the same happened. The blood was fresh. They hadn't been dead for 12 hours yet. It usually took longer for a tracking spell to lose its effectiveness, unless the bodies had been tampered with. "Whereabouts were the bodies found, exactly?" I asked the guy. "Outside this very building." Guess it's worth trying a tracking spell there. Or not. Whatever our enemy was, it was clear they had the upper hand in this, because we didn't know where they'd strike next. Wanda had been outside the manor's wards when she'd been attacked, over 2 miles away from here. 3 tracking spells outside yielded 0 results. Of course, we'd walked all over the area by now, which always muddled the traces. But even though the faint trail of blood remained on the concrete, nothing appeared when I used a spell. Vance tried one too, but got the same lack of results. "Satisfied your curiosity?" asked the old man. "Not really." "Any witches live around here?" "Sure do. Why?" "Someone might have tampered with the bodies. No human killed them, though, that's for sure. Be careful walking outside alone." We left the crooked-toothed man behind as he retreated back into one of the ground-floor flats. "How can any monster mess with a tracking spell anyway?" I asked of nobody in particular. "Don't answer that, Vance. I know someone's probably pulling the strings and trying to clear the evidence. Or maybe the attacker repels magic. Like the ring. I'd thrown the damn thing into an alternative dimension. It was about as gone as possible, yet—
"It won't be the ring," said Vance. "The spells still work, but their effects are stifled, not blocked."
"They all cut out when the murder happens." I replayed the scenes in my head. Actually, with each tracking spell, it works perfectly fine until the creature, whatever it is, actually touches the person being attacked. That's how it looked from my side anyway.
"Yes, that makes sense. However, I think we should ask for more eyewitness accounts. He said the attacker sounded like a bird."
"Birds? I've never heard any—"
"Oh, no." "What is it?"
"Furies," I said. "Remember, they're the one bird-like creature from Faerie I've met which have big enough claws to do this kind of damage. Why hadn't I thought of it before?"
"You're right, but nobody has actually seen the attackers yet."
"Because they flew away? Or turned invisible, glamouring themselves? Death fairies like them must have tricks up their sleeves we haven't seen yet."
"Maybe," said Vance. "We should leave. Maybe the necromancers will be able to call up the victim's spirits, and they'll remember something."
I'm not hopeful, to be honest. I threw down a cleansing spell to erase the tracking spells we'd used. "All right, let's try for eyewitnesses first." I walked back into the building and down the dingy corridor, knocking on the first door I came to. Nobody responded. I didn't get an answer until the 5th door.
"What?"
grunted a male voice. "Did you hear a bird outside yesterday?"
"Did I what?"
"We're investigating a—"
"I'll stick my knife in you if you don't go away!"
he yelled. I looked at Vance, who raised an eyebrow. I shrugged and moved on to the next one. In the ground floor corridor, I got a grand total of 3 responses, all of which were about as polite as the first one. "Hopeless," I said as we left the building. "I can't believe I ever used to work with these people."
"Did you know the victims?"
asked Vance. "Nope. I didn't associate much with their type. They were loners who competed for the biggest kill. They don't have long lifespans anyway. Maybe we're looking in the wrong place." A growl came from behind us. I spun around. A hellhound sat across the road, tongue lolling, for all the world like a giant Labrador, with deadly fangs. The same one as before. I recognized it from its comparative lack of height compared to the others. It's that hellhound again. Hang on. It didn't attack me last time. I think it's waiting for a new master. Vance kept his weapon out. His eyes narrowed at the hellhound.
"We already have a half-fairy running amok around the manor. I draw the line at hellhounds."
Did you actually think I'd adopt one of those monstrosities? I'm trying to figure out why they want to follow me around now. I killed their master.
"But you're the only other person with similar magic to its former master."
I took a step towards it, then another. Don't worry. I'm pretty sure it hasn't formed an attachment to me. Maybe I'll use a tracking spell and see if any of its buddies are here. You aren't cavorting with Furies, are you? The hellhound made a whining noise. Probably didn't understand me. Sighing, I pulled out a fresh tracking spell. Don't take this personally, I said to the drooling beast. I just want to make sure you're not a villain. The hound's drool ran into the spell circle. I made sure not to touch it. Dying from friendly hellhound drool would be stupid as hell after the week I'd had, and leaned into the spell. The hellhounds saw in black and white, a detail I'd forgotten. I was running through a field on all fours, running towards other huge dog-like shapes. More hellhounds. This was outside the town, by the look of things. Nothing but fields for miles around. The hellhounds ran, or lay on the grass, like a pack of wild dogs. As I locked eyes with one of them, a shiver ran through my body, as though they could see me behind the hellhound's eyes. Impossible. I was seeing into the past. I jerked back and let the spell's effects fade away. It didn't attack anyone. I saw others, too, living wild. I think they were left behind after I killed Fionn. If Vance noticed me breathing too quickly, he didn't say. Did I imagine that feeling? Like I was connected to them?
Where?
He asked. Way outside the city. I reckon they're like other wild fae kind.
They've attacked humans in the past.
On other Faerie's orders. They're probably close to shifter territory, and those guys are more than a match for a hellhound. If they're spotted near humans, I'd say differently. But I don't think they're the enemies we need to worry about now. It's definitely not them who attacked the mercenaries or Wanda. I didn't see any Furies either, but that doesn't mean they aren't hiding. This attack was nowhere near the manor, so there must be more than one of them. Mercs are tough. I can't see how one took out 3 seasoned fighters at once.
The Furies were difficult to kill, said Vance. Certainly for anyone without magic, and I can't think of a reason they would target Roseanne.
Nor me. But they're both unseelie. I don't even know where the Furies came from. Fionn said he got them from a dark corner of the Grey Vale, and summoned them into this realm through that witch ritual. I paused. Also, it can't be anything like the ring then, because the tracking spell I just used worked fine. The hellhound made a whining noise and butted its head against my leg. Vance glared at it. The beast ignored him. Both of them had a similar kind of fear effect magic, but it didn't work on one another.
Ivy, if you want a puppy, I'll get you a puppy. Hellhounds aren't pets.
So I'll let it live with its buddies outside town. Go, I told it. You're not coming with us. We've places to be. The hellhound made that whining noise again, which was weird to hear from a dog that size. Then it turned around and sloped away before breaking into a gallop. I watched until it disappeared from sight. Okay, apparently it did understand me a little.
That creature is nothing but trouble, said Vance.
Yeah, I know. I think I'll pay a visit to the chief and apologize on behalf of our unwanted visitor. Maybe ask if he's seen any more hellhounds around.
Anyone would think you'd actually want to restore our diplomatic relations.
More like spy on him. Wonder if he knew about Quentin. Vance shook his head.
The few half-bloods who lived here in my grandfather's time kept to themselves and hid amongst humans. Non-supernaturals, that is. Even the chief.
It sounds like he's in trouble. His magic's fading. These immortality rumors won't die.
We'll work out a long-term plan later. If you did speak to the chief, perhaps ask him if he knows any fae creatures who can counter witches' spells.
Doubt he knows. I sighed. I can't shake the feeling this is my fault. I've been watching my back, but since the hellhound came after me, I've been wondering. What if a Fury did follow me from Faerie?
They were all summoned into this realm, not the Grey Vale. If they're the attackers, they were already here. Besides, they'd need the ability to cross realms in the first place.
True, I said. Okay, I'm going to visit the necromancers again.
I'm needed at the manor, said Vance. I need to set patrols for today and make sure nobody is unaccounted for. Wanda might have been in the wrong place at the wrong time, but if the attackers decided to take the mages down to get at Roseanne, we need to be ready.
But if that's the case, it makes no sense for them to attack the mercenaries. Crap, that reminds me. I need to tell Larson.
Should I drop you off at the guild?
Sure. I can walk to the necromancer's place from there. It's only 10 minutes away.
I still worry about you, Ivy.
He wrapped his arms around me and kissed me.
What happened to Wanda might easily have been you.
I leaned into his warm embrace. I'm good. I'll see you in a bit. Next second, I stood outside the mercenary's place, while Vance disappeared again. Time to find Larson. I pushed open the glass door. Shockingly, he wasn't there. But someone waited in the reception area, a young woman of 19 or so. Half-blood. She had bright green summer eyes, her pale skin glowed, and she wore jeans and a leather jacket. Her waist-length raven-black hair swished over her shoulder as she stood up gracefully. "There you are," she said. "I've been waiting long enough." "For me?" I said blankly. "I don't work here anymore. I'm investigating an independent case for Larson. Who are you?" "I'm Lily. You've worked with other half-fairies before, right?" "Yes," I said warily. "What is it?" "I've lost my house," she said. "The new chief divided up the territory and her trolls bulldozed my flat. The new chief? Oh no. What happened to Chieftain Tave?" "He was imprisoned for treason. We have a new chief now, and she wants to divide our territory into Seelie and Unseelie." My mouth dropped open. What the hell? Who is the new chief? I can take you to her, but I don't think she'll listen. Will you help me? Possibly. Shit. Wherever Larson was, finding out what in the living hell had gone down on half-blood territory was more important. I can't promise I can. But you're the fairy killer. I thought you killed bad fairies. I thought I had a worse reputation, I said. I kill fairies who break the rules, and it sounds like someone over on your territories overstepped their boundaries. Can someone just step in as chief whenever they feel like it? No, but she did it anyway, said Lily. It's not supposed to be winter until November, not properly, but she's kicking Seelie fairies out of their homes. We're meant to go to the other side of the territory. Sounds like someone needs a chat with my sword, I muttered. She's not talking crap about immortality, is she? A pause. Oh no. Major freaking understatement. If a fairy was in power who'd actually believe the rumors, we'd have a mass exodus to the Grey Vale any day now. What happened? She said we had to earn immortality, said Lily. She's dividing us by court and bloodline. I ran away before it got worse. I didn't know where to go, but I heard you were the fairy killer, and I can't kill your leader. It'd start a riot. I half walked, half ran, sending Vance a quick message as I did so. I'd been so wound up over Roseanne and the mysterious killer, it hadn't even occurred to me that the rumors would have sank into the hearts of the other fairies in half-blood territory and inspired drastic action, like deposing the chief. I didn't like the guy, but if the alternative was another Calder, Damn it. I'd have to put the guy back on his throne, at the risk of anarchy. The chief was the sole leader. If his supporters had betrayed him, I didn't even know how to go about getting him back into his former position without sparking chaos or making the territory divide. While splitting Seelie and Unseelie made logical sense, based on their conflicting magic, they'd lived together for a generation. Vance responded, saying he'd join me as soon as he'd finished conferring with the mages. The rest of the council would doubtless have words to say about the attack yesterday, but I couldn't be in two places at once. Not to mention stopping the killer would take priority over preventing the half-bloods from causing more trouble. But for now, we had no new leads, and I really did need to find out what had happened to the chief. Okay, focus, Ivy. I'd assess how bad the damage was before going in all guns blazing. The gates to Half-Blood territory lay open already. From within, an icy breeze swept over me, underneath my leather jacket. Lily shivered, walking quickly with her shoulders tense. It shouldn't be this cold at the end of August. The territory was supposed to look like summer, but even the rotten flowers and dying trees had vanished, leaving an empty space of yellow grass. Half-bloods filled the space, talking loudly. Seelie, all of them. Most were more or less human in appearance, wearing human clothing, though there were a few hulking half-trolls and diminutive half-hobgoblins and half-gnomes. Piskies flitted about, their usual spark dulled. There was no sign of any of the armor-wearing Seelie knights, who'd guarded the territory on the chief's orders. Have they all been jailed too? Where's Unseelie? I asked in an undertone. They're on the territory's other side. They outnumber us by nearly a third. Damn. Nobody looked at us, all absorbed in their own arguments. She led me past the block of flats. They were in the same place as before, to the path leading to the chief's clearing. Two hulking half-trolls blocked my path, brutish arms swinging clubs. I'm here to speak to your chief. Lily made a frightened sound and backed away. I didn't blame her. The trolls grunted and didn't move. I'm Ivy Lane, and I'm asking to speak to your new leader. Let her through, said a familiar voice. I stopped. Oh shit. No. The trolls exchanged a conversation made mostly of grunts, then moved to either side, allowing me to walk through into the clearing. Alison the Banshee sat on a throne made of what looked like bones, picked clean. Frost clung to the dark-branched trees and to her raven-black hair. Her pale face shone with the glow of fairy magic. The new chief of the half-fairies smiled widely. Chapter 10. You, I said. Disbelief mingled with anger. Of course I ought to have known she'd be responsible. But she'd never shown the slightest interest in the Half-Bloods' territory before. The chief of the Half-Bloods has been removed from his position, said the Banshee. We need someone who better represents the needs of both Seelie and Unseelie fairies in this realm. I'm putting myself forward as leader of the Unseelie. What the hell are you playing at? I hissed. You can't depose the leader of the half-fairies. That's not how it works. You never learned our ways, human. You didn't live on their territory, I retaliated. I'm fairly sure you can't put yourself forward as leader, not to mention splitting up Seelie and Unseelie and kicking people out of their homes. My territory will be the stronger for it. Besides, that's not relevant. Alison's foot tapped against the throne. Shit, with those human bones. I'm chief. I don't have to listen to humans. I'm the ambassador between the mages and the half-fairies, I said. What the hell are you thinking? You could have gone anywhere else and started a new life after Fionn died, and you escaped.
Escaped? You abandoned me in the Grey Vale.
I was bleeding to death and had to destroy the ring before it swallowed up my realm, I said. I didn't mean to leave you behind, but I've been back since then and never found anyone.
You lie. You'd never have helped me. You didn't trust me.
You're not giving me a good reason to. I indicated the throne of bones. You've double-crossed everyone 10 times over. I won't let you ruin lives because you feel like sitting on a throne.
You don't understand our ways. The chief was weak and wanted us to live like humans. Under my rule, we can be glorious once again.
Where'd you pull that one from? Oh, double crap. For the record, there are a shit ton of enemies at your door. If you split apart, you'll die.
No, we won't,
she said.
Summer and winter have endured as separate territories for thousands of years. This is only our temporary residence anyway, before we go back to Faerie.
Oh, for crying out loud. It's not possible for you to go back. Have any fairies come back to collect their abandoned offspring in your lifetime? It's cruel and unnecessary to keep lying to the others who don't know any better. As for immortality, the air stirred, and both trolls growled a warning. Vance appeared, walking into the clearing as though there weren't 2 club-wielding trolls right behind him. His gaze was fixed on the throne.
This isn't your battle, Mage Lord,
Alison warned. On the contrary, as leader of the mages, it's my duty to oversee any leadership changes and ensure the relationship between the half-fairies and the mages remains intact.
That doesn't mean you tell us what to do, she hissed. My people have been downtrodden for too long, forced into this pitiful excuse for a territory, drained of our power. We deserve to be allowed back into our home, and the chief was too weak and pathetic to challenge the order and take the case to his full-blooded kin.
And you aren't, I said. You're a harbinger of death, Alison. I doubt you'll have many fans. The half-bloods don't even know who you are, and neither will the she.
I'm the harbinger of immortality, she said with a smile.
If Fionn told you anything, he was lying, I said. Just like Calder. I thought you knew better.
Your human mind games won't work on me, Ivy. My work's needed here. Most of the half-bloods wanted the chief deposed.
For what reason, exactly? What did you do to him?
He won't be bothering us any longer. He'll be trialed for treason, and if found guilty, executed.
I arched a brow. Little harsh? He hasn't done you any harm.
Executing your leaders is illegal, said Vance.
Only if we were human, which we aren't. We don't have to play by your rules, Mage Lord. We aren't long for this realm.
Probably not if you carry on like this, I muttered. You're throwing away over 10 years of peace for what?
What else? Immortality, and passage back to our rightful home.
Who are you working for this time? Vance asked. Who made you these promises? Fionn is dead.
I don't have to answer your questions. I only allowed you to enter my territory so I can tell you where we stand now. My people govern our own, and we don't want to cooperate with you any longer.
What did you do with the chief's guards? Throw them in jail? I interjected.
They attacked me when I ordered the chief arrested. I had to put them away.
Why'd you arrest him in the first place? The chief was legally your leader.
He lied to us about whether we can go back to Faerie, she said. We will go back to our rightful homes, and you, Ivy Lane, Won't consort with the fairies behind our backs.
Consort with the fairies? Shit. She must have found out about the visit we'd had from Summer a few weeks ago. The fairies came to speak to me. They definitely didn't mention letting anyone follow them back into Faerie. Pretty sure they don't care if we all die, actually.
I know you spoke to the Seelie court. The former chief told me. That's when I knew we could no longer trust in him as our leader. He allowed the opportunity to slip away.
Look, he might be a dick, but he's saved your necks before by allying with the mages against the Grey Veil.
The chief has done nothing but put our lives in danger. When the drug took control and killed dozens of us, he hid away. When a god escaped into this realm, he did nothing. When the hunt approached, he didn't even evacuate the territory. Every time our lives have been in danger, he's been incompetent and useless.
Like it or not, she had a point, and most half-bloods would agree. Whatever he's done, you're what, 16? That's not old enough to be leader of a few hundred half-fairies.
I'm older than I look.
Not a great argument. You don't even have a majority vote, do you? You just arrested the chief and put yourself in charge, without any ceremony whatsoever. Even the fairies wouldn't allow that. Alison looked entirely unconcerned.
Tomorrow I will be elected as chief, once my people have had the chance to make up their minds about our future. They can nominate others to challenge me, if they like.
Yeah, right. I'd bet she had another plan to sabotage anyone who challenged her. In that case, I'll send an envoy tomorrow, said Vance. As to the outcome, splitting your territory before it even comes to a vote is a foolish move that will only lead to unnecessary discord.
Summer and winter weren't meant to live side by side. I'll be chief of the whole territory.
You aren't yet. You can't throw people out of their homes.
I can if they break my rules.
She bared her teeth.
You've outstayed your welcome. Mage Lord, you're welcome to send your people over to learn the outcome of the vote tomorrow.
Look, I said, I get that you don't like this realm, but I've spoken to ambassadors from Faerie. If you approach them diplomatically, instead of knocking the doors down, they're more likely to be willing to listen than if you tear open the way to the Grey Veil. Admittedly, both options were unlikely, because no fairy living outside this realm gave two shits about us. There are countless half-bloods living in this realm, said Vance. Outside this city, even outside the country. If every one of them learns of your foolish plan, the impact on this realm will be devastating.
Isn't that a shame?
She laughed.
You're on the wrong side, Ivy. Fionn wanted you to stand beside him. I think you could be useful to me. That's the only reason I'm letting you walk away from here today.
Not if I take you out first. Blue light ignited along my blade. Don't push me.
If you kill me, you'll start the war you fear so much. That's if my people don't take you to pieces first.
I can take you. But what if she was right? 200 half-bloods could do a lot of damage. Innocent people might get caught in the crossfire. And most of the others on the territory, if they believed her, had been brainwashed by a lie. They'd kill me without a thought if she gave them good reason to.
Leave,
she hissed, her talons out.
Both of you.
Magic smashed into us with the force of a steamroller. I fell sideways into Vance, who steadied me as a whirlwind of icy air whipped against us, stirring up leaves and other debris. The floor fell out from underneath me, and my breath jammed in my lungs as we fell. Ow! I staggered upright. Vance straightened from where he'd braced his feet to stop from being knocked over. We'd landed right outside the gates.
Shit! That was the chief's security magic. She's stolen part of his power already.
Yes,
said Vance, his voice quiet, angry.
She has. We need to confer with the council on this turn of events.
See what I mean? Said the half-blood who'd brought me here. Apparently, she'd been waiting outside. I don't know if what she's promising is true, but my girlfriend is unseelie, and we won't be allowed to be together if the chief splits our territory. Shit. I looked at Vance. It's illegal, what she's doing, but if you want to leave the territory and start over somewhere else, we might be able to help. Right, Vance?
Of course,
Vance said.
However, I suspect she plans to use other means to lure you into supporting her plans.
Yeah. She was a fairy, which meant no holds were barred. Anything might happen. I have family in the town, said the half-fairy. My human family, but there are 200 people on the territory, and not all of them can leave. Yeah, I'm trying to think. If the majority vote to keep the territory together and oust her as leader, but it depends who else puts themselves forward as leader. I didn't understand fairy politics, and the half-bloods had been on shaky ground from the moment they set up their territory. Only their arrangement with the mage lords stopped them turning on one another, and now the banshee had taken over, I had the sinking feeling reasonable arguments would never work. Not now she'd promised them what they'd always wanted. Maybe the territory would survive being split. Summer and winter did frequently get into arguments, or all-out brawls. Winter were cranky all through spring and summer. Summer were sullen all through autumn and winter. But more got along than not, united by a common cause. Problem was, the only cause uniting them was a mutual desire to go back to their own realm. Nothing we could offer them might make up for destroying their dream, which didn't even factor in the immortality issue.
I would offer your people shelter, said Vance, but I need to confer with the council in any case. I will see if we have any other options available, however.
Thank you, Mage Lord. Tell you what, I said. I'll ask my friend, the leader of the Laurel Coven, the witches. Maybe they can offer shelter to people who are stuck and can't get back into their territory. Apparently, my new role was advocate for half-fairies. That nobody deserved to be left out on the street because a banshee had decided to throw a tantrum. The house Isabel had inherited from Francine was mostly empty, and the witches had enough wards to keep out hostility. Besides, the half-bloods who actually agreed with the banshee would doubtless want to stay on her territory, not leave. I called Isabel. Hey, we have a situation. I thought so, because I haven't heard from you all day. Did you find anything out from those mercenary debts? Another dead end, but you won't believe what's happened. Then I told her. A modified version, to avoid bringing up our security issues in front of Lily. Isabel was silent for several long moments afterwards. Ivy, she said, please don't get involved if you don't have to. I'm not sure I have a choice. There's a bunch of displaced half-bloods. I wondered if they can stay in the witches' shelter for now, because the banshee kicked them out of their home. It's not ideal, but the one I've met isn't like our creepy little guest. Think normal human. Okay. I'll check with the others, but that should be fine. I think. How is your creepy little guest? Under watch at the manor. Drake hasn't called, so I assume she hasn't summoned a god or broken the furniture. Yeah, I know it isn't funny. I can't even handle this. The half-blood thing has to come first. Which put Larson and the murders at dead last. Behind Roseanne, Quentin's betrayal, and the Banshee's usurpation of the chief's position. When the universe wanted to screw me over, it did so in style. What even happened to the chief? Asked Isabel. He's stuck in jail. I'll figure this out. But is it okay if I let the half-bloods who are in trouble go to your place? Some of the things the Banshee's planning. I wouldn't let anyone get caught up in it. Yeah, sounds like you're neck-deep in the shit. I'll close up the office if you aren't coming back. The rest of the coven needs to know what the Banshee's doing. Good point. Yeah, I can see this having a huge backlash on other supernaturals. She was hinting at expanding her territory too, which might piss off the shifters. There's no way this won't end badly. I need to be at the manor, but I'll try to drop by later, okay? Sure thing. Ivy, maybe you should have stayed on holiday. I'm starting to think the same. I hung up. Vance had ended his own call.
Drake said Roseanne is being suspiciously compliant.
I pocketed my phone. Good. I can't take any more drama. What now?
An emergency council meeting with the other mage lords.
Can't you all walk in and take Allison down?
We don't know what magic she's hiding. She's certainly not holding back any longer. We also need to come up with a possible solution if she ousts any half-bloods who disagree with her from their territory.
Yeah, it's a bloody nuisance. I turned to the half-fairy. Is there a deadline to vote on your new leader? Tomorrow morning, said Lily. Apparently, anyone with fairy blood counts. I know people living in town who might not know, so I'll tell them. We need to get her out of power before she does any more damage. Yes, we do. I rearranged my weapons. Tell everyone you can. I'm not exaggerating when I say it might mean life or death. I don't understand where she even came from. I've never seen her before in my life. But you knew her. She's a banshee, I said. A harbinger of death named Allison. She used to work for the leader of the Wild Hunt. Long story short, she double-crossed me so many times it was impossible to tell whose side she was on. Now we have our answer. Her own, apparently. The Hunt. Her eyes widened. That's what she was talking about. She said the new leader of the Hunt was coming here soon, and he'd take us all back to Faerie with him. Shit. I paused, considering how much to tell her. To hell with it. The Wild Hunt is the closest to a mortal you'd get. You have to die and become a ghost to go with them. That's what happened when the last guy did it. He died, got stuck in limbo, and ended up permanently dead. What? Why would you want that? At least one half-fairy had their head screwed on the right way. Keep thinking like that, and you might just survive the madness. She blinked. I've never seen Faerie. Why would I want to leave my family here? Tell the others. What the Banshee's promising. No matter how it goes, it'll be a one-way ticket to the afterlife for all of you. And the rest of us too, probably. I'd try to get some of the others out before the Banshee realizes what you're doing. Okay. She looked frightened, but nodded. Hope she doesn't get caught, I said as she walked away. I know I'm an idiot for trusting her. And Roseanne too, come to that. Maybe I have a weakness for outsiders and outcasts.
It's not a weakness, said Vance. I wish the mage lords had done more to consider the half-fairy's wishes in the past. When I was looking for information on those orphanages, it became clear to me that we mishandled the half-bloods' arrival and gave them the impression they had no choice but to isolate themselves.
Maybe, but the immortality rumors won't die no matter what. As long as someone's making those ridiculous promises, there's going to be bloodshed one way or another.
What we need is to ensure somebody else takes on the leadership, said Vance.
How does it even work? I asked. I know they're allowed to vote in their own leader, but I got the impression it has to come to a majority vote, like with the mage lords.
Yes, he said. It does. Moreover, what she's doing, dividing fairies into Seelie and Unseelie, will undo 20 years of peace agreements. Half-bloods have never known the conflicts which affect their kin in the fairy realm.
Then they won't vote for her.
It depends if they have a better alternative,
Shit. Guess it also depends if they believe what she's offering. Look how many took part in the trials. And if she's jailing anyone who disagrees and going as far as to kick people off the territory, then we must be prepared for anything. However, most of the half-bloods I've met over the years do not share Roseanne's opinion. The ones who work with humans might yet outweigh the number of her supporters. Better hope so, I said. She's all but admitted to killing humans before. And there are loads of people, especially the ones living in the forest and the abandoned parts of town, who just love free rein to do whatever the hell they like. It won't happen, Vance said. Even if she does win, acting against humans puts a bounty on her head. Every mage will oppose her, along with all our resources. My people outnumber hers. But not the Grey Veil, I said quietly. We could recruit everyone in town capable of fighting, and it might not be enough. We'll deal with it later, said Vance. Firstly, the council needs to know about this development. They originally wanted to meet to discuss the attack on Wanda and our security measures. Yeah. If Larson comes griping about why I didn't report to him, I'll hang up. We need to get ready for the worst-case scenario. Faerie doesn't fuck around. No, said Vance. I would have to agree with you there, Ivy. Chapter 11. Vance took us back to the manor to grab an early lunch before the other mages showed up. Apparently, Roseanne was still being a hyperactive nuisance, so he'd sent her into the back garden with a couple of novice mages to stop her from interrupting the meeting. She was the least of our problems. I wanted to storm into the Half-Faeries' jail and get the chief out. Or, failing that, find another suitable leader to challenge the Banshee. Or shove her in jail for breaking all the mages' peace agreement rules into 100 pieces. But I was the only person who could explain the situation to the rest of the Mage Council. Not that they ever listened to me. I propose we send in an envoy, Vance told the council once everyone was seated. The Half-Bloods have ousted their leader and segregated their territory. With the unseelie fairies outnumbering Seelie, this vote might not end favorably. There is more than our own arrangements with the Half-Bloods at stake. Especially as she shoved the chief and all his supporters in jail, I added. We're watching a dictatorship rise on our doorstep. Is there nothing we can do? Can't the Half-Bloods living outside the territory vote on a leader? Asked one of the newer council members at the back. That was my understanding. All Half-Bloods are allowed to have a say. But to vote, they actually have to enter the territory, I said. I wouldn't put it past the Banshee to set up an ambush, or even change the rules on a whim. She's already evicted people from their homes to establish this new division between Seelie and Unseelie. Which is which, again? Someone else asked. Oh, for God's sake. Most of the council had only superficial knowledge of the different classes of Faerie. Even the mage lords didn't know how many half-bloods actually lived in town. In fairness, that was because of the fairies' tendency to abandon their offspring with no warning and leave them to fend for themselves. I hadn't been around in the confusion following the invasion, when their territory had actually been established. But it became chillingly clear just how many had grouped together in the hope of opening a way back to Faerie. Killing their dream would spark a riot, or even a war. Because if the Banshee really did open a door to the Grey Veil, there might be an army hiding there, waiting to claim our world as their own. The Banshee is Unseelie, I told them. She's also spent most of her life living with other abandoned kids, or in the forest. She doesn't like humans much, and doesn't see why the Half-Fairies should obey our rules. Then she ought to be deposed, said Lady Penrose, one of the other council members. She is breaking the law, but she's also a harbinger of death and a shapeshifter who used to work for a fairy more powerful than most of the Sidhe. Most half-bloods will be scared shitless of her, and the rest worship the ground she treads on. They didn't get it. Vance understood some of it, but not enough to convince the other mages. None of them had ever been desperate or outcast, in a position where they had to accept what they were offered or live out on the streets. Most of the half-fairies had either been raised by humans or more or less grown up alone, with no one to help them assimilate into human society. They'd been here 2 decades, and it was clear the council had filed half-bloods into the same category as regular fairies. Ignore them until they became a threat. Though it wasn't fair to pin all the blame on the mages. Really, it was partly the chief's fault for insisting on anti-human rules in the first place and playing on his she bloodline to keep his position as leader, making promises he'd never be able to keep. If he'd had the guts to speak out against the trials and address the immortality issue head-on, it would have been unpleasant, but we might not have come to this point. It's complicated as hell, but it'd help if you listened, I said, interrupting several mages who decided to start an argument amongst themselves. The half-fairies have grown up believing human blood is a weakness, and so is mortality. So all they want is to go back to Faerie. But the Banshee is promising she'll give them immortality as well. That's like winning the lottery for most of them. I've been telling them for years that it's a lie, but every time a way into Faerie opens, the half-bloods take it as proof that it is possible to go back. They'll think we're taking away their lifeline if we interfere. Half a dozen people stared at me. Damn it, we don't have time to argue amongst ourselves. Every plan we made depended on assuming the Banshee would play by the rules. Since she was a backstabbing unseelie who switched sides whenever she felt like it, I highly doubted she would. We've been generous enough to grant them their own territory, said Lady Penrose. If they overstep their boundaries, we have reason to take action. We're trying to avoid a war, not start one, I said. Firstly, persuading all the half-fairies to vote. Okay, there's not much we can do on that front. But if she loses the vote, it'll prove at least half of her people don't want her there. We could talk to the chief, but she'll have put him under tight security in jail.
We can also offer safe passage to every half-blood who wishes to cooperate with the mages, said Vance.
We already gave them their own territory, said another. The ones who want to live like animals, like the shifters, they're bringing it on themselves.
Enough,
Vance said sharply. Oh boy. Insulting the shifters wouldn't endear anyone to Vance.
These are people who believed they were making the best choice for themselves and their families by choosing to live amongst their own kind. Their magic works in a similar way to the witches. It grows stronger when they are together. I suspect the Banshee intends to use the half-bloods' strong bonds to incite chaos and result in a second invasion. The best we can do is offer our support to abandoned half-fairies. However, that doesn't solve the second issue. She's effectively brainwashing her people with promises of immortality and the return to Faerie.
They aren't immortal? Asked Lady Penrose. I thought all fairies were. Pure fairies are, I said. But not the ones who live in this realm. Half-bloods have the same lifespan as regular humans. But she's telling them she can give them immortality in Faerie. Obviously, opening the way back into Faerie, summer and winter, is out of the question. So it'll be the Grey Veil instead. What evidence have you of this? If we overstep our boundaries, we'll be undoing our own peace agreement. Is it not possible for you to speak to them yourself? I've talked to them before, I said. They're absolutely convinced. And the Banshee has strong magic. She can easily take down anyone who stands in her way. Then we send in a small group. No, said another council member. We need to protect our own first. There was an attack on our own property. Why is nobody talking about that?
What happened to Wanda will be resolved, said Vance, in his most dangerous voice. However, the Banshee's actions might start a war, whether or not the election tomorrow goes her way. I propose we at least send mages to watch the situation, in case she attempts sabotage between now and then. This might mean fracturing our supernatural relations. In the meantime, I can assure you I am doing everything I can to ensure our people are safe, and no other attacks will take place. "Isn't there a half-blood downstairs?"
interjected another of the council members.
"Is she with this unseelie banshee?"
"No," I said. "She's like a lot of the half-bloods, living alone. Her human father was a mercenary, and he was the first victim of these attacks."
"She was the monster's target?" asked another. "It's not safe to house her on our property."
"Don't I know it? But the alternative was condemning her." "Wake up!" I snapped at them. "There are two possible outcomes if the Banshee takes power. The best-case scenario is the half-bloods are split on their own territory, and then turn on her when they realize she duped them. The worst-case scenario is she meant every word, and we'll have another invasion. This time we might not survive it. Worry about the rest later."
"This seems a little extreme," said Lady Penrose. "The half-bloods are within their rights to choose whoever they like as their leaders. There's little we can do to interfere without going against our own promises not to intervene. They're allowed to change their own laws."
"Not when the person changing them isn't legally the leader and wants to kill them," I said.
"We will consult amongst ourselves as to the best course of action," said Lady Penrose. "This is a matter for the mage lords only. I would argue sending an envoy to their territory is hardly necessary. They've clearly made up their minds, and any interference would be taken as hostile. Is there any proof they aren't responsible for the attack on Wanda?"
Shit. Well, no. Might the Banshee be behind it? I couldn't think why she'd attack mercenaries, especially when she knew full well where I lived. Unless the first attack had been a warning, and she and Roseanne were on the same team. I didn't say any of this aloud. I might be paranoid, and one rash move could easily spur the half-bloods into a war they couldn't win. I left the room as the mage lords moved to consult amongst themselves. Okay, I didn't really expect them to understand, but of all the times to start listening to me, they'd had to ignore the impending war part and focus on the petty details. It didn't matter who was leader, not when the Grey Veil might be planning an attack. Then our whole planet would become Faerie territory. I stopped at the top of the thickly carpeted stairs. Roseanne. How was I meant to explain this to her? Now, if she wanted to join the half-bloods, she'd be put with the unseelie, and right under the Banshee's brainwashing. So I had no choice but to persuade her to stay with the mages, which would be fine if we were closer to solving Liam's murder, but we weren't. On top of that, enough time had passed since the mercenaries' deaths that their ghosts would probably be long gone. I should have asked Isabel to speak to the necromancers. As I reached the foot of the stairs, my feet caught on something, and I grabbed the handrail to keep from tripping head over heels over... a person? Wait. Quentin! My hand shot out and grabbed the back of his jacket before he could dodge, and I lifted him off the ground. The brownie made a furious noise. "Unhand me, human! Not if you're planning to disappear back into Faerie again!" My pent-up anger bubbled to the surface, but I put him down. "Come to have a good laugh at us, have you? I'll bet you knew about this all along. You probably watched them lock up the chief yourself." "What the devil are you talking about?" snapped the brownie, backing down the last 2 steps into the corridor. "There's anarchy breaking out on half-blood territory, and I'm not letting you spy on any of us any longer. Explain what you were doing here, or get the hell out." "I am in no way affiliated with the half-fairies."
I came here to explain to my master.
You'll have to go through me first. Vance is busy. Like I said, he has a shit ton of problems without you adding to them. If you can't give me a damn good explanation for why you ratted us out to the summer court, I'll throw you to the wolves.
I told nothing of you to the summer court.
You spied on my partner for his whole life. You deceived his family, betraying their secrets to whoever your other masters are. And you kept your own secrets from him, which might have endangered his life. If he died along with the rest of his family in the invasion, you'd have no one to serve, because you decided taking your master's orders literally was more important than protecting Vance and his family. If Vance forgives you, you'll be lucky, because if I was in his place, I wouldn't. The brownie stayed silent through my entire outburst. Then he said,
None of us were in any way prepared for the invasion. I certainly didn't know it was coming, and neither did my masters. Not until it was too late. I obeyed their orders because I thought it would keep my family safe.
Well, it didn't, I snapped.
It is the greatest regret of my life, said the brownie. The safe house was supposed to be more secure than the manor. My orders were clear. I was to stay here, while the Colton siblings hid somewhere safe. Instead, the She found them. When I learned of what happened to Sarah, to their parents, you cannot fathom how I grieved them. They were my family.
And yet you still decided not to tell him the truth. For years. He trusted you, Quentin.
I had other lives to consider. My orders were clear. If I told the mages my allegiance to the court, with nobody around to explain the importance of the union, they would see me as a threat, as you do, and I would have to leave this realm without fulfilling my mission. In any case, I am unable to give details, according to Summer's orders.
You're under a vow.
Yes. It partially came undone when I used my healing ability, but I am bound not to speak of those I serve. I can tell you, however, that I kept my master's secrets safe, and never told the Seelie court anything that might have led to their interference in this realm. The Seelie and Unseelie courts were not responsible for the invasion.
Can you be sure? You've overheard every one of the major strategies, and God knows what else. Even I didn't know the top security details, like all the majors' backup safe houses, though Vance had trusted me with most of the information.
And has any of that information been used against you by the enemy? Have you ever had reason to believe the mages were compromised?
The brownie looked outright insulted. Only when the spirit was possessing Lord Carlisle. Otherwise, no. The enemy had outwitted us at every turn, but not because someone close to the mages betrayed us. But then, how could I be sure?
You distrust my kin, perhaps for good reason. But I swear on whatever you prefer that I have never betrayed any of the mages, nor have I given secure information away. I retain allegiance to the family I serve in the Seelie court, because it is my duty to ensure the magic in both realms remains in balance.
But they aren't, I said. You know they aren't. The Grey Veils tried to invade. Calder nearly destroyed the town. And then Fionn. You can't have totally ignored all those times. Hell, the invasion itself happened when you were supposed to be keeping an eye on us.
I was told only to watch, not to intervene. I have very little magic of my own. The invasion couldn't have been prevented.
I'm sure Vance will be thrilled to hear that.
You report to Summer,
said Vance's deep voice from behind me.
That means you can travel to the summer court, yes? Is that where you were yesterday? Mage Lord.
Quentin bowed sharply.
I must apologize for leaving the manor yesterday.
I glared at him. There's a hell of a lot of other things you need to apologize for, too.
We're currently dealing with an uprising on half-blood territory, Vance said. Someone intends to undo everything the mages have worked towards since the invasion. If you knew anything, You won't be welcome in this house any longer.
I know nothing of the half-bloods.
I'm bound to this house. My orders are to speak to you alone, and no other fairies. Is that why you never spoke to Ralph?
His voice was sharp.
I respect that you might have different orders from your other family, but there isn't anything to stop me from releasing you from whatever vow you made to my grandfather.
That won't be necessary, said Quentin. I've broken no part of the bond, nor have I betrayed any of the Major's secrets to my other family. Look, I said, maybe you never told our secrets to the enemy, but you must know the Grey Veil will attack again. We've been one mistake away from another invasion for nearly a year now, and your people have done nothing to help us, even though they were the ones who exiled the Sidhe who attacked our realm. The invasion was a tragic event, but the Seelie court cannot intervene in every small dispute. The court played their part in stopping the conflict last time. Like what? He shook his head. The vow stopped him speaking. Unless he was lying, which was entirely possible. Sure, you can't tell us, I said. So what the hell's stopping them from preventing a second invasion? The Grey Veil's still linked with our realm, and the Half-Bloods know it now. They want to open a way back. They've ousted their leader because he wouldn't let them. Tomorrow they'll probably vote in a harbinger of death who's promising them immortality. And that's if she doesn't do anything else first. They want to go back to summer, Quentin, and God help you if they find out you can do exactly that. Very well, he said. I will find my masters and bring an envoy from the summer court. Preferably before the half-bloods unleash hell. I tugged a hand through my hair and addressed Vance. Damn. Want to sneak into the jail and speak to the chief?
I suspect she has guards watching him carefully,
said Vance.
However, it might be an idea to get the chief's side of the story. That said, I suspect she thinks we might try to break him out.
Yeah, that's what I'm scared of. I'm at a loss now, to be honest. I don't dare speak to our little guest, because if she hears what happened in Half-Blood territory— Wait, that reminds me. I looked at the brownie. Tell me what you know about the Morrigan. Quentin blinked in surprise, but said, The Morrigan is a powerful being, ruler of Winter's outer territories. She is stronger than most unseelie Sidhe, and seen as a bad omen from most who know her name. The Morrigan had a daughter, I explained, with a human man. She abandoned the child here. Her father was murdered a few days ago. His ghost asked me to protect her. She told me she can hear spirits, but the Morrigan can rip them from their bodies. Correct. However, the Morrigan would have little reason to come to this realm. Mortals have no interest for her. But why would someone want her daughter dead? Aside from killing the competition, maybe. But the way Liam died was pretty brutal. And other mercenaries were killed in the same way, by some kind of fairy with really sharp claws. And you're still sheltering her here? I have to. Now Half-Blood territory isn't safe. Just tell me, can you think of any reasons for someone to try and kill a harbinger? Many. They aren't to be trusted. Too true, I muttered, thinking of the Banshee. But they killed her human father too, and he'd had nothing to do with her. Unless I can stop whoever it is, we're stuck with her. If the Half-Bloods have fallen under the control of another harbinger, I would suspect a connection. What? The Banshee sent someone to kill her father? Or specifically, sent the Furies? It had been Fionn who'd summoned them. Unless someone wanted Liam out of the way, to ensure she had nowhere else to go. "Mage Lord!" shouted a voice. A young mage apprentice ran into the corridor. "It's your half-blood. She's gone." Chapter 12. Of course she is, I growled. That's it. Take another shot, universe. I'm done.
Whoa. The mage backed away. Sorry, I can't think how she slipped out, unless she climbed over the fence and went through the field. Shit. Yeah, she probably did. I ran the rest of the way to the conservatory and through the glass door onto the patio. Grey clouds gathered above the lawns, promising rain. No traces remained of Roseanne. I swore and marched through the garden towards the field at the end. After I'd searched under every bush and behind every carved hedge, Vance reappeared at my side when I returned to the conservatory. Any luck? I kicked mud off my shoes, furious with myself. I should at least have attempted another apology for insulting her, but the Banshee's coup had driven everything else from my head. No, said Vance. She isn't around the front of the manor, either. She's obviously run somewhere else. Then we'll use a tracking spell. She isn't immune to them. We went through to the living room. Wanda wasn't here. Vance said she was resting in her own room upstairs, and it was easy to see where Roseanne had been sitting. Fairies shed more than humans did, and a glossy black hair, which glowed faintly with fairy magic, was enough. Tossing it onto the table, I grabbed a tracking spell from my pocket. Time to track down our little runaway. I blinked, and as the spell activated, I saw through her eyes. Roseanne ran through the field behind the manor. Wait. Her feet weren't touching the ground. Damn. She'd shapeshifted into her bird form. Roseanne flew over the fence into the grounds belonging to the neighbouring house, then the next. Once she'd reached the end of the road, she'd slipped down the nearest alley and onto the street. She flew faster than I'd ever seen her walk, her feet skimming the pavement, until she reached the entry to the block of flats where she'd lived. Thought so. The winged half-fairy I'd seen last time came to meet her, wearing an agitated expression. She spoke, frantic gestures accompanying her words. Roseanne kicked at the fence with a clawed foot. The hands in front of me exploded into taloned claws as she took off into the air. She flew higher, aiming for a familiar sight. Half-blood territory? I cursed, letting the spell fade out. Why? Why does everyone insist on going out of their way to be as big a nuisance as possible? Since she could fly, Roseanne would be on half-blood territory in seconds, and thanks to the lack of sound, I didn't have a clue what had upset her and her friends so much. I explained to Vance what I'd seen. If the Banshee catches us, she won't go easy on us this time. Maybe we can talk to the guards and get our little problem back without resorting to violence. Which seemed about as likely as a friendly chat with a troll, but at this point I'd take any chance possible to stop the Banshee from causing any more damage. If I couldn't spare every half-blood she'd brainwashed, I needed to speak to Roseanne again. I wouldn't give her up, even after all the trouble she'd caused us. I'll go with you. The Mage Council meets again this afternoon, but I've made it clear that I will act alone if it means keeping our peace agreements secure. I'd really like to know what pissed her off. I feel like the Banshee's responsible. I'd taken too many risks to keep Roseanne safe already, but for all I knew, something more serious had happened. I'd need to talk to her to be sure. But with her under the Banshee's watch, this could only end badly. If it comes to conflict, we can't afford to hold back, Vance said, an iron blade appearing in his hands. I don't expect the Banshee will let us enter her territory without conflict. Roseanne didn't want to live there, I said. Either she's decided she'd rather side with the Banshee, but she looked pretty upset. I'd bet my sword Allison did something. She's already separating families and jailing people who disagree with her. She didn't even see her fellow half-bloods as people. She'd never wanted to be their equal. Maybe becoming their queen was what she'd wanted all along. I gripped my sword's hilt tight, and tendrils of blue fairy magic swelled around me as Vance took my arm. In a rush of air, we stood outside half-blood territory again.
One look told me we wouldn't be getting back inside so easily. Flashes of blue and green light ignited the air. I'd thought the fairy magic in this realm was fading, but the energy pouring off the lawn was enough to light up the sky like a daytime fireworks display. I stopped beside the gates, trying to see what in hell was going on. A summer versus winter confrontation, by the looks of things. Spiny plants had grown all over the front lawn, masking the view, and the deafening sound of conflict assaulted my eardrums. Screaming, animal howls, and other indiscernible noises clashed in my ears. Well, if she wanted to turn winter and summer fairies against one another, she succeeded! My voice was smothered underneath the racket, and it took several seconds to realize someone was calling my name. Ivy! Mage Lord? It was the half-blood we'd spoken to earlier. What's going on in there? I asked her. Lily hurried over to us. Some of the others don't want her as leader. They don't want their homes taken away. I tried to get through to them. I didn't see who started it, but they won't stop. Shit. This was bad. Allison had stirred them into a frenzy without needing a drug like Calder had. Is this her plan? Rile up the half-bloods until their combined magic ripped open the veil, without her having to lift a finger? Lily moved aside, revealing a hole torn in the hedge. Not the only one. Apparently their security was entirely gone. Other half-bloods fled through the gaps, some carrying possessions, dragging others along with them. A rumble of thunder resounded. The air went taut, then crackled with power, as the gates flew wide, and Vance stalked towards the opening, as I'd seen him do once before.
Stop this, unless you wish to destroy yourselves.
Last time, the riots had halted instantly. The difference was, back then, the chief had been able to calm down the noise. The Banshee had caused this riot herself, and the fighting didn't even stop. Not when Vance and I moved close to the gates, and not when they swung closed and then open under the force of his magic. He might as well have yelled into an empty room.
"Stop this at once,"
he said, his voice magically amplified. But still, nobody stopped. Angry lines marked his face as he glanced sideways at me in disbelief. I doubted anyone had ever ignored an outright order from him before. He stepped back, the air still rippling around him and knocking over anyone who came close. But they just picked themselves up and carried on fighting. "We can't leave the gate open!" I looked at him in alarm. Frost had already begun to creep across the pavement, along with plants with creeping tentacles and sharp thorns. "Fairy killer!" someone screamed. "This is your fault!" A torrent of blue winter magic surged towards me. I raised my sword to retaliate, and the gate closed with a snap behind us. My shield deflected the magic into the crowd, knocking a half-gnome flying.
"We need to find the Banshee,"
said Vance.
"I don't think she's here."
"We need a better view," I said through clenched teeth. I summoned up a shield around myself first, in case anyone tried a counterattack. Then Vance transported us onto the roof. "Hey!" I yelled, surprised when my voice resounded several decibels louder than usual. Vance must have used another amplifying spell. "Look over here!" I raised Helena into the air, willing my magic to shine brighter than ever before. It might not be as strong in this realm, but blue light shone from both sides of my talisman, overshadowing the frenetic bursts of blue and green light from the battle. From here, it was clear the Banshee wasn't involved in the fighting. I glanced over my shoulder, where the entrance to her clearing was visible, and saw no signs of her ogre guards. Where's she hiding?
"Stop fighting!"
Vance commanded, to no effect. "Stop it!" I yelled. Some of them looked up long enough to notice me, but as others seemed content to continue beating the shit out of one another, anyone who stopped was liable to have their head ripped off.
Half the fighters were shapeshifters, full or partial, and the clamour of animal noises added to the chaos. Teeth snapped, claws swiped, and a cluster of half-redcaps ran amongst the battle with cries of delight at the sight of the crimson blood highlighted against the bright green lawns. They might not have much magic, but could still take one another to pieces. "Stop!" I threw up a shield as someone hurled a handful of magical energy at me. It bounced off the shield, fizzling out. I pushed at the shield, directing it down at the half-fairies, willing it to fill in the gaps. I'd practiced using magic on several people at once, but there must be at least 50 down there. But it was working. My magic pushed between the fighters, knocking them over like dominoes, and the fighting halted as people realized what was going on. Vance used his ability in a similar manner, manipulating the air currents to drive the fighting half-bloods aside. Neither of us could hold off this many people indefinitely, but we'd at least got their attention.
"What is the meaning of this?" Vance demanded.
"She's gone!" yelled a blue-eyed winter half-fairy, whose hand was bleeding badly.
"She picked some of them to go with her, and left the rest of us behind."
"People are dead," said a half-bird-formed fairy, fluttering up to hover a metre below us. "We found bodies in the forest, some of them missing." My heart lurched. "Who killed them?" "I say she did. The new chief. 2 of them wanted to be leader of Summer's territory." Shit. That actually did sound like the Banshee, getting rid of her competition. "But where is she?" "She left with some of the others she picked out. Said she'd be back."
"She won't be," said another. "She abandoned us like the chief did."
"Did anyone see where she went?" Shit. I thought she was hiding, delighting in the chaos she'd created. Not that she'd skipped town. "Thought she'd been taken at first," said the winged half-fairy. "The whole reason she stepped in is because the chief ignored the disappearances." "She didn't mention disappearances," I said. But Roseanne's friend back at their flat had. Maybe that's why they'd been so pissed off. Perhaps she'd come here to talk to the chief. I scanned the crowd, but Roseanne didn't appear to be amongst them. "That's what she was saying when she made her last speech," added the winged half-fairy. "Everyone was asked to name someone missing. We all knew someone. When she said it was the chief's fault, his supporters stepped in, and someone killed Gale. She was supposed to be Summer's leader."
"Traitors!"
yelled a voice, and the spell broke. The fighting broke out again, more subdued this time, as my magic and Vance's fought to keep them apart. Damn it! I pushed outwards with my shield again, but the attackers seemed half-hearted anyway. The flashes of magic were less bright than before, and more than a few of the fighters had collapsed or crawled away for the gaps in the hedges or the shelter of nearby trees.
"She took our magic with her," someone shouted. "No, that was the chief's fault. I should have been chosen. I came in second in the trials twice."
Their shouts faded to the background. Aside from the forest, which didn't really belong to the half-fairies anyway, there was only one place the Banshee might have gone. Faerie. "Vance," I said, "we need to talk to Roseanne's friends. They were all riled up about something, maybe these disappearances." Vance raised a hand, and the air split, knocking half-fairies aside.
"We'll search for your leader, but someone might be manipulating you," he said, to no effect. "If you value your own safety, you'll either leave this territory or cease attacking one another before you destroy yourselves."
"Damn," I whispered. "They've never ignored you before, even with the chief in power."
"It's the Banshee," said Vance. "It sounds like she had some kind of selection process, designed to stir up jealousy and conflict. When you combine that with splitting the territory,
she's turned everyone against one another. But if this is a Calder-style plot to stir up enough energy to power a summoning circle,
It won't work. Their magic is fading, and it sounds like she's taken her best picks along with her. Question is, why? For her own personal army? Maybe she's building a castle in the Grey Vale. Except she couldn't. She was a half-banshee, and wouldn't have a she-lord's magic even if she was full-blooded. So what the hell was she planning? Want to go back to Roseanne's old house? I took Vance's hand, the other still gripping my talisman. 3 seconds later, we stood in front of the block of flats. A couple of raindrops fell, and the bruised sky rumbled with thunder. I spotted the winged half-fairy Roseanne had spoken to, and made a beeline for her before she could disappear into the shadowy bushes growing near the fence. I need to talk to you. It's too late, ain't it? She's gone. My heart sank quicker than the next raindrops fell. Roseanne, where did the banshee take her? I warned her not to go. They took the others, too. They took your friends. The banshee did. I don't know. They just disappeared. Like I said, been happening for weeks. But what she's offering, it's different. You can volunteer. It's an honor. Volunteer? Oh, hell. Didn't take a genius to guess why. I'd failed to get through to her after all. I'm going to find her. The winged half-fairy had already disappeared into the shadows. Vance placed a steadying hand on my shoulder as I cursed and kicked at the nearest fence post. God damn it! She's gone back to Faerie, with the banshee. So the quest to become leader was a ruse? Vance frowned. Why go to the trouble of removing her opponents? To cause anarchy? No fucking clue. Vance pulled out his phone. Drake's patrolling the back garden. He said he saw a flash of green light in the field behind the manor. Oh no. Faerie, I said. That's where I crossed over. Tell him not to leave the garden. There were spirit paths all over town. If the banshee could cross one, she could use any of them. Except as a non-she, she shouldn't be able to cross realms at all. And neither should the half-bloods. Vance and I landed at the garden's end, where the fence bordered on the field. A thin mist hovered above the ground, and Helena glowed blue as a familiar cold rushed over me. Something black was scattered on the floor. Feathers, said Vance. It's a warning. She has Roseanne. Or the Morrigan did. Both were dangerous, unseelie death fairies I didn't want getting their hands on the half-bloods. Or someone else is pulling the strings. Whispers rose in my ears, and threads of smoke swirled above the line where the spirit path divided the field. A chill took hold of me. If the banshee, a half-blood with limited powers, could cross any spirit path, what else might come crawling out? I took a step back. Right. I'm going to tell Isabel to keep an eye on the necromancers and the Vale. You tell the mages to prepare for the worst. I turned to Vance. You wait here. If I'm not back in an hour— Absolutely not, said Vance. I'm going with you. But you nearly died last time. So did you. His jaw set stubbornly. We were unprepared when we went after the Lady of the Tree. You know your magic now. You're more than a match for the banshee. As for me, I plan to bring as much iron as I can. You can change the layout of the path however you like now, can't you? Yeah, in theory. But so can other fairies. The most powerful ones, anyway. That's why I've never run into any of them over there. I'll bet the banshee is hiding. But what in hell does she need those kids for? Power, said Vance. Or an army. Either might be true. They didn't know any better. They were changelings, moved from one world to another without true ties to either of them. She'd taken advantage. Just like Calder. Like other damned fairies who needed pawns in their games. People like Roseanne would be collateral damage. Fury ignited inside me, simmering as we walked back to the manor and the weapons room. I already had 2 iron daggers inside my sleeves, but I added a spare to my coat pocket, and a small container of iron filings to use in a pinch. Then the usual: salt, healing spells, trackers. Most witch spells didn't work properly in Faerie. The healing ones were for Vance and the half-fairies, not me. After what had happened the last time the 2 of us went into Faerie, I'd damn well be prepared for anything. While Vance gave the other mages instructions, I went to the garden's end and called Isabel.
"Damn, Ivy,"
she said, after I'd explained my overly eventful day.
"You never catch a break, do you?"
I was just thinking the same. I zipped my pocket one-handedly on the spells I'd crammed in there. If Vance and I aren't back by the end of the day, tell the Coven to prepare for a potential attack from Faerie.
"Will do. I've spoken to Rick today already, and he said the veil seems normal, but I'll ask him to watch out. Please, be careful this time."
"I'll try." Everything depended on my ability to get us over into Faerie unharmed, and to get us back in one piece. So, no pressure, Ivy. "Are you okay?" asked Vance, appearing at my side as I contemplated the ground-level fog smothering the field around the spirit line. "Yeah. Hang on to me. I wouldn't put it past Faerie to try and separate us." His hand squeezed mine. "I'm going nowhere." I hugged him, because I didn't know when I'd next get the chance. Then he transported us onto the spirit line, and I felt the answering tug as my spirit tried to break free. I gritted my teeth and aimed for the grey veil, dragging Vance along with me. Chapter 13. The part where I passed through death never failed to creep me out, but this time a horrific noise ripped through my eardrums. Screaming. Terrified faces flashed before my eyes, disappearing before I could get a close enough look at them. And then I was solid again, and falling fast. My back hit the ground, knocking the breath from my lungs. Vance groaned next to me, and I quickly let go of his hand. I'd grabbed tight enough to draw blood. "Sorry." I got to my feet, withdrawing Helena from its sheath. Blue light haloed the blade, which hummed with a pleased sort of resonance. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" Vance stood, dusting silvery leaves off his coat. He frowned at the forest, a slightly irritated expression on his face. He'd worn the same look when he'd come here before. Being cut off from his mage abilities bothered him. "We just passed through death, and someone was screaming, really loudly." "No, I didn't hear anything." "I'll bet the banshee pissed them off." Of course, there was no sign of her. Silver-leafed trees grew thick, forming a canopy of interlocking branches, which allowed only the faintest trickle of light through. The path was covered in more silver leaves, which reflected the light and gave it an ethereal appearance, which made the shadows between the trees look even more menacing. But no landmarks gave away where we might be. "This is what it always looks like now," I said to Vance. "It's like a default setting. All we have to do is follow the path, and I can change it, to some extent. I've never found anyone else here, not unless they wanted to be found." "You've never used a tracking spell here before?" "No, but it won't work. Either the realm itself neutralizes most spells, or the fairy's own magic does." "That makes sense. I suspect, as before, I can use my ability to move us around, but only to places we've been to before." But he couldn't displace the leaves, or the path. This whole realm was made by someone who didn't want non-fairies messing with their creation. "Take me to Roseanne," I told Faerie, and took the first step. The path began to warp before my eyes, twisting and turning out of sight. I nodded to Vance and we walked. Soon enough, the path sloped upwards, becoming more of a hill than anything. It widened until the trees grew further apart on either side. The hill flattened out on top, becoming a bridge. On either side swirled clouds of smoke, pale enough to resemble clouds viewed from high in the air. It looked, in short, like the between realm on the ley line where I'd fought the Lady of the Tree. Okay, that's new. The floor didn't look at all sturdy, but my magic could catch us if we fell. I led the way, feet cushioned by possibly cloud. Vance followed more slowly, scowling at the drop on either side. Heights didn't bother him, but being without his magic as a crutch was precisely the reason I hadn't wanted to bring him with me in the first place. He'd stand at my side until the end, but when faced with fairies who didn't give a crap about humans, one mistake might cost his life. And that was a price I wouldn't pay. Not even to kill the Banshee, or whoever the hell was behind this. But Vance was right. The Lady of the Tree had outwitted us last time because I hadn't understood enough of my magic to be able to use it to my advantage. And Vance had been too set on saving me to focus on saving himself. We were both used to Faerie by now. We'd walked into death, literally, and come back. Magic was an endless thorn in my side, but now I was its equal. The bridge narrowed until we could barely walk alongside one another. I was fairly sure we weren't actually on the ley line, but the cloudy path was similar enough that I half expected an ancient dragon to soar through the sky. This wasn't a natural formation. Someone had made it. I was so focused on making sure my magic covered the ground, in case the floor fell out from underneath us, the castle took me by surprise. It appeared silhouetted on the horizon, a mountain-sized structure with turrets and towers big enough to break through the cloud cover. Castles! I snorted. Pretentious fairies. Whose territory have we wandered onto this time? But the castle grew no closer, and the clouds overhead darkened, until it seemed more like walking through death's grey smoke than a calm sky. Vance gave me a protective look and moved closer. The breeze grew colder. Faces began to appear in the cloud. I rolled my eyes at them, even as a pang shook my chest at their familiarity. Ignore them. They're trying to trick us into walking over the edge. Vance made a faint snarling noise. His claws had appeared at some point, rough against my hand.
Is the Banshee behind this?
Didn't think she had this kind of magic, but she might be working with someone. Or Faerie had decided to throw a few obstacles in our path. The dead often hang about here, but most of the people I'm seeing have passed over the veil. It's probably an illusion. A cry of terror ripped through the sky. Vance's grip on my hand tightened.
That didn't sound like the dead.
I wouldn't be stupid enough to go chasing after the source of the noise, not until we were on solid ground. The sound of terrified sobbing grew louder. I ground my teeth together and walked on.
Even if it's a real person, the odds of us saving everyone are low,
Vance said.
I know you saved Roseanne before, but...
This isn't the place for heroism, I know. Learned the hard way in my first week here. There was this kid. I cut myself off, shoving the memories away before Faerie used them against me. This was the absolute worst place to dwell on the past, especially when more faces kept popping up in the smoke. People I'd failed to save. The faces faded in and out as we passed by, but one section of smoke ahead of us darkened, like a shadow of a person waited behind it. The smoke began to coalesce into a single, bigger shape, growing closer. Shit. Don't tell me there actually is another dragon here. What the hell is that? I stopped walking.
It looks like a ghost,
Vance took one more step, then halted. Neither of us particularly wanted to walk through the weird smoke thing, in case it threw us off the bridge. Shit, it's a wraith. Think superpowered ghost, possibly with magic. Vance swore under his breath. Without magic, none of his weapons were any use against a ghost. Neither were most of mine, except my sword. Problem: the never-ending drop either side of the cloudy bridge. The wraith moved forward, yowling. Every hair on my arms stood on end as a breath of icy wind slammed into the magical shield I threw in front of Vance and me. I raised Helena, daring the wraith to come closer. It was more monster than human. Cloud formed into a vaguely humanoid shape, with knife-like teeth. With a hissing noise, it swept over me, claws raking at my head. I swung my blade, but missed as the creature dissipated into smoke, then reformed itself behind us. Luckily, my talisman was made to kill the dead. I turned around and swiped again, the light around Helena growing brighter as I consciously focused on drawing energy into it. The faces might be illusions, but the dead lingered here, and their rage knew no bounds. I didn't dare jump in case the platform disappeared, and drew Vance and me down into the abyss. He couldn't use his power to fight the beast, but he could hold me to stop me from falling over the edge. I spared him a grateful glance, then returned to trading swipes with my elusive enemy. Every time it dived, my sword hummed in my hands, agitated when my magic missed its strike. The beast dived again, claws snagging on my forehead, as Helena's blade passed through its wing. Blood streamed into my eye, even as the sting faded and my magic healed the cut. Beside me, Vance hissed in anger. Then his clawed hand latched onto my arm.
"Ivy,"
he said through gritted teeth.
"Don't drop your shield."
I glanced down, and the bottom dropped out of the world. The cloudy bridge we stood on had turned transparent, and rather than smoky cloud, the overlapping shapes of open-mouthed ghosts formed the ground beneath our feet. The whole bridge was made of the dead. Terror filled my blood, and my body's primal fight-or-flight reaction warred with the instinctive response of the magic which fed on the despair of the dead. A claw swiped between Vance and me, rocking the magical shield, which was now the only thing keeping us from falling. Bastard! I raised Helena again, took aim, and leaped. I met the creature halfway, the blade passing through its smoky form. Knife-like teeth stretched in a mouth wide enough to devour me whole, but I reached below for the screaming desperation of the dead. The light burned brighter as I stabbed it a second time. Blue light burst from the sword's edges, and the wraith shattered. I fell as though in slow motion, feet catching on the bridge's edge. Vance's arms circled my waist, steadying me, but the shield remained intact. Gradually, the screaming faces disappeared, to be replaced with cloud. The bridge was back. Another goddamned trick. I swore into the abyss. Loudly. My own curses flew back at me in a series of ghostly howls, but I'd already started walking again, Vance alongside me. He didn't say a word. A thin layer of sweat coated his forehead, and his mouth was pressed in a line. We walked off the bridge and onto earth. Vance didn't let go of my hand once, until the clouds had disappeared. Then he cursed under his breath.
"The next time you feel like walking onto a bridge here, Ivy," he said, "don't."
Don't worry. I'm striking it off my next holiday list. I leaned against him, needing to steady myself against his warm, solid presence. Our embrace was brief. Then he pulled back, looking around the clearing. His expression was almost feral, and his claws hadn't disappeared. Like, he knew this place brought the animal out in everyone, and if he couldn't use magic, he'd rely on his shifter side. Anything to keep me safe. Damn if it didn't warm my heart. At least, until we saw the first bodies. The mud had been churned up, as though heavy footprints had run through it. Or been dragged. Blood mingled with silvery leaves and more mud. Thick blood. Not quite dried. A teenage girl lay across from us, mouth open in a scream. 2 others behind her. They're human, I choked. Bodies tossed carelessly in a heap. All had been ripped open, their organs devoured. I swallowed bile and looked away.
Half-blood,
Vance said softly. Shit. I forced my gaze back to examine each corpse and see if any were Roseanne. They were definitely half-bloods, a mixture of summer and winter. But the only magic visible were thick trails of blue winter magic hovering around the bodies. I was almost positive it had been her screaming I'd heard. Roseanne, I called quietly. I didn't want to hold out much hope. You shouldn't have come. Go away. Go home. She stumbled out from behind a tree, covered in blood. She's alive. Relief mingled with wariness as she dropped to her knees, hands over her face. I didn't move any closer. I came here to find you. Where's the banshee? Gone. She stopped sobbing, glaring at me between her hands. Go away. Come with us, I said. Liam wanted you to be safe. What she's doing isn't safe by any stretch of the imagination. You're making it really difficult to care if you willingly throw your life away. But I keep my promises. You didn't promise him. He's dead. So are these people, I said. They failed the test. She lowered her hands. If the prize is to stay alive, then you're better off in the mortal world. Every hair on my body stood on end, as a chill swept through my nerves. Does this look like winter to you? I indicated the shadows creeping between the trees. Their silvery leaves were the only source of light. It's not. This realm is dead. Surely you can feel it. It's too late, Ivy, she said. Why wouldn't you listen when I told you to leave me the hell alone? Then she pounced. I brought up my sword in a wide arc, which cut off her attack, and nearly cut her talons off too. Blood sprayed out where I snagged her left claw. She screamed.
I knew it,
said Vance. He faced her with his own claws out.
You've been working against us all along, haven't you?
God damn it! Just for once, I'd like to believe the best of someone and actually turn out to be right. Blood dripped from her injured talon, but she let it bleed. Her eyes narrowed to iridescent blue sparks. You were too late for me. She came to me weeks ago. I never had a witch talisman. I lied. A tittering laugh came from behind me. I can't believe you actually followed me here, Ivy. I swung around, magic forming a tight shield around Vance and me, as the banshee strode out. No blood covered her silken black dress, and her glossy hair shone around her too pale face. You, I snarled. You were pulling her strings, weren't you? I regret it, she said. She didn't want to hurt you, in the end. She's pliant, but you made her doubt herself. I couldn't have that. I needed her. There aren't many harbingers left. I've got the best of you before. I really wouldn't push me. What the hell is your game? Theon's dead. You could have been free to do what you wanted.
None of us are free, human, said the Banshee. Our souls are bound to Faerie, and without it we expire. I won't accept it. I'll never accept it.
You know, if you wanted to go back to Unseelie, breaking their laws by killing other fairies isn't exactly the best way to go about it. Why'd you even want half-blood territory if you just planned to sacrifice their lives?
My people are more useful dead than alive.
Oh, shit. I should have known. Didn't explain how Roseanne fit into everything, nor why Allison had left half-blood territory in a mess. Unless she wanted to make sure they were never able to challenge her. The Banshee laughed, obviously seeing the realization on my face.
Did you really think I'd have a change of heart and cooperate with humans?
No. I thought you decided you wanted to rule over half-blood territory, and then got bored with the politics and ran away.
Why stay in the mortal realm when I could return here? I wanted every fairy who has the capacity to fight the tyranny of the courts to stand by my side. The centuries we've suffered under their rules. It's time to take back our realm.
You aren't centuries old.
You know nothing about us.
She smiled, revealing pointed teeth.
Banshees are reborn if they die. You can't kill me.
Shit. So she must really be centuries old. Which explained why she didn't talk like a 16-year-old, at least. But I can kill your pet. I glanced sideways at Roseanne, who'd moved out of range of Vance's claws.
Be my guest. She's outlived her usefulness. She was willing to help me from the start, willing to turn on her mortal father and punish him for abandoning her.
You killed him. I ought to have known. Roseanne looked at her feet. Blood still dripped from her ruined talon.
She set my furies on him, corrected the Banshee. Cried while she did it, too.
I fucking knew it was the Furies. Heat blazed under my skin as my magic awakened in blue fire.
They're more reliable than hellhounds, more loyal. You know, after you killed Fion, they all deserted me. They won't obey a new master.
That's funny, because they were pretty keen to obey me. But maybe she doesn't know. Allison didn't need another army. Roseanne's betrayal was enough of a blow. They'd wanted to recruit her, not kill her. Maybe she'd felt betrayed by her human father, but the Banshee had played on her fears. She'd known exactly what she was doing. Magic flared to life in my hands, and I aimed a killing blow, not at Roseanne, but the Banshee. The ground turned to cloud, turned transparent, and I fell. Air whipped past, tearing at my hair, and the Banshee's maniacal laughter caught in my ears. I stopped falling the instant my magic caught up with me, steadying my fall like a net. Breaths escaping in gasps, I looked up to see Vance had his claws at the Banshee's throat. I shook my head frantically as he moved, seeing me safe. I wouldn't let him waste his power on me, not when I could get out by myself. I think. I pulled the magic back into myself, then let go, propelling myself up, higher, until I'd have collided with the treetops, if not for the magical shield surrounding me. I dropped in front of the Banshee and sent all the power right at her. She flew back, head over heels, right into the path of Vance's claws. Dodging one attack, she took the other on her talon, bright blue-red blood spilling onto the silvery leaves and mingling with the blood of the half-bloods she'd killed. Or the Furies had. It didn't matter. I wanted her dead.
Go on. Taking my life will only make me stronger.
I wouldn't be so sure. I faced her on the other side, blocking her escape. You know Theon was a liar. He didn't care about you any more than his other slaves.
You're still using the past tense. She laughed. Theon wants to thank you for disposing of the ring for him.
My heart missed a beat. No, he's dead. Yeah, the ring's gone. You can't use it to attack our realm any longer.
Your realm would have been a small price to pay. Theon wanted you at his side.
He was a deluded bastard. I'd had enough. I nodded to Vance, and his claws swiped, pinning the banshee to the tree. Blood spurted. She screamed, high and loud. I pressed the tip of my blade to her throat. She'd double-crossed everyone. But Vance would allow me the killing blow.
I wouldn't,
she added, baring her teeth.
Not unless you want to give me even more power.
Because she'd be reborn. Here, the dead didn't stay dead for long. But she'd wrecked too many lives already. That's a risk I'm willing to take. A whistling noise behind me, and the winged form of Roseanne lunged at me, her talons glancing off the back of my jacket. Stay out of this, I said. I'll bet you won't be reborn. She fell back, desperation in her eyes. It wasn't supposed to be like this. I can't let you kill her. It's too late, said a deceptively soft voice. Smoke descended to fill the gaps between the trees, thicker than the clouds, solidifying into a fearsome, tall figure. Glass-like, bright blue eyes stared at me. Theon was a wraith. Apparently my brain had reached peak what the fuck, because I just stared a moment, until he'd touched down onto the floor in front of me. Ivy Lane, he said. You'll come to regret taking my life. Chapter 14. My tongue unstuck itself from the roof of my mouth. No, I said. I'm not interested in talking to you. Go haunt someone else. Theon laughed. His transparent form was as formidable as the body he'd worn in life. Huge, at least 6.5 feet tall, broad and dangerous. Inhuman, and not in an attractive way. Sure, he was objectively handsome, if you didn't mind the serial killer vibe, which I did. His blue eyes gleamed with winter magic, even in death. You destroyed my talisman, too, he said. Was that necessary? Yes. I hadn't been quite sure all his power was really contained in his sword. Thanks to the ring, he'd lost all his magic temporarily, but I hadn't wanted to risk leaving it lying around for someone else to pick up. And I'd had bloody enough of keeping track of fairy talismans. You still don't understand the purpose of our artifacts, even the ones you claimed yourself. You came back from the dead just to monologue at me. I'd be flattered if you hadn't killed so many people. What the hell did you do with those half-fairies? Most of them perished, and gladly. Because you're pulling the strings, not her. She's only alive because it's convenient. And I guess because otherwise she'd be reborn and disobey you, like she did when she led me to the right place in the forest. It's thanks to Allison here that I will live again. I've heard this shit before, I said. You're dead. Existing as a wraith hardly counts. Even if you don't fade from existence, you can't do anything from here.
Even your hellhounds are coming to me, not you." He laughed.
"Hellhounds. And yet you insist we are nothing alike."
I ignored his comment. "I saw your body decay when I stabbed you with iron. The ring sapped away your magic. Oh, and the Seelie court are pretty pissed off with you, by the way."
"You spoke to the court?"
"Yes, I did. You're outnumbered." Maybe if I pretended the whole of summer stood behind me, he'd realize his mistake. Okay, so Summer didn't give a shit what he did. They didn't even know he was still alive. But I needed every advantage possible. He couldn't be working alone. Even being without a body didn't make him harmless. But I wouldn't give him any excuse to intimidate me. "You're nothing but a ghost yelling into nothing," I told him. "I don't give a shit what deluded power trip you're on this time. It won't work. See, to command an army, you kind of have to be alive."
"That's where you're wrong."
He gestured, and the trees parted. All eyes turned to face the fearsome, turreted castle, which appeared in the gap. The same castle I'd seen from the bridge. The part of forest we stood on was cut off from the castle by a vast gulf, like a moat made of pale cloud and sky. The castle itself was a monstrosity of stone, too big to be handmade, the sort that could only be sustained by powerful magic. Could he affect the realm even as a ghost? Or had his other minions taken over the job? The Banshee didn't have that kind of magic. A chill swept through my body. Either he was a super-powered ghost, or he'd recruited another she-lord.
"So many souls," he whispered. "So many changelings, keen to join my army."
"You're keeping them in there?" Horror froze my blood. "You have half-bloods in the castle!" I took a step forward, but the gap was too wide. Assuming I got past Fionn, the Banshee, and the now terrified-looking Roseanne, I couldn't make the jump over to the castle, even with my fairy magic-enhanced speed at max. At least, I didn't think so. Maybe if I used magic as a bridge.
"You don't get to see my castle yet, Ivy."
He waved a hand, and the trees closed in again, tighter. Vance snarled, and I had no doubt that if Fionn was in corporeal form, he'd leap at his throat. But nobody could touch Fionn as he was now. Except, maybe, for my sword. I gripped the hilt, assessing the best way out with minimal damage. Taking out the Banshee first would rid him of a temporary ally. Roseanne wasn't capable of much alone. I held still, even as my magic jolted to attention when Fionn raised a hand. My body burst into flames. Not literally, but I screamed at the sudden pain which racked my body from head to toe. My muscles seized up, my legs locking into place, no longer able to stand or fall. Suspended in pain, I bit down on another scream, tightening my grip on the handle of my blade. Vance's roar of fury cut through the pain, but his blade passed right through Fionn's transparent form. My cry of pain turned into a warning, as the ghost's hands rose and blue energy flared out, knocking Vance down. He still had his magic. It was as strong as it had been when he'd been alive and breathing. "Let me go, you bastard!" I screamed. It's a trick. He was doing something to convince my mind and body I was in agony, even though he hadn't laid a finger on me. Sense and reason fought with a more primal response to the pain, the urge to scream and run, anything to stop the pain. "He did this to you before. Move, Ivy!" My sword glowed brighter, the blue glow enveloping my body. It fed on the pain, but more than that. A spasm of disconnected rage ripped through my magic, A reminder that my talisman hated him. Hated his magic. The spell broke, and I jumped at him, aiming for the throat. Helena passed right through him. My magic didn't. Blue light engulfed his form, bright enough to dazzle the eyes. Come on. I've killed a ghost before. More than once. I gritted my teeth. Beads of icy sweat trickled down my back. The sword glowed bright, but if anything, Theon looked bored. God damn it! Die already! But for whatever reason, my magic couldn't kill him. Theon smiled.
You destroyed my talisman, but not my magic. I told you before, your magic recognizes me as an equal. We're on the same side, even if you don't know it yet, Ivy.
I'll never stand with the dead over the living. My sword dropped a little. The echo of the pain rang through my bones. Vance was on his feet again in a blur, claws flashing. But neither his claws nor his mage ability worked on someone who didn't have a body. All he could do was shift the air around, and Faerie limited his power. Theon hardly seemed to feel it.
You're wasting your energy on me, Mage Lord, he said. Or is it Shifter? The Mage Council has changed much since my last visit. I remember their views on half-breeds well.
Vance made a low, angry noise.
Don't speak of them, you murdering scum.
Theon flashed him a smile.
So, you did tell your lover, Ivy. I wondered if you would.
Fuck off, I said quietly. Yeah, I'd told Vance that Theon was most likely his parents' killer. Because if I'd been him, I'd want to know the truth. It wasn't my secret to keep, and he deserved to know. Except, if Theon remembered he'd been the one who killed the Mage Lords, that meant... White teeth flashed in his ghostly face, as Theon saw the realization dawn on me.
I remember everything, Ivy. That's why I'll win this time.
No, you won't. So he had his memories back. I'd only seen part of his history, but he'd seen it all. He'd lived it.
I had to come back, Ivy, to where it all started. I had to relive the moment when my army rose, and when death itself bowed down to me.
I couldn't move. Even Vance appeared frozen in place as the truth sank in. For both of us. Before the invasion, centuries ago, Theon had had an important job, harvesting fairy souls and helping them move on into the afterlife. And yet everyone had forgotten him. He'd been left imprisoned. Someone had really screwed up over in Faerie, and only the fact that he'd had no memory of his previous existence had stopped him from repeating the invasion. Now, nothing was stopping him from doing the same again. Was it his plan all along? Maybe he'd let me kill him, because he'd known he couldn't outdo the ring as long as he had a physical body. In the end, he must have come to realize the quickest way to get his memories back was to die and be reborn. Simple as hitting a reset button. I'd been so desperate to get rid of the ring before it unraveled our realm's magic. I hadn't considered he might have wanted me to finish him off. Because there was no winning. Not that day. And I hadn't considered that he might have the ability to reunite his soul with a body, just like the Banshee had promised the half-fairies. And they died for it. It's not your fault. To stop the ring destroying my realm or falling into the hands of another fairy, I'd had to dispose of it as quickly as possible. I'd known he had some special relationship to death, or his magic did. Apparently his magic had survived the loss of his talisman. Maybe he didn't need one. He'd wanted me as a partner, because we were unique in that we could survive the Grey Veil without slowly dying over time, as fairies who'd been stripped of their magic did. Even now, when he'd lost his magic several times over, being reborn had reset all his powers. I never did find out the extent of his magic. He might as well be a god. Fionn gave a quiet laugh.
I can hardly believe you brought your mage here with you, knowing this realm is poisonous to mortals. Even interesting ones, like he is. Stop talking, said Vance in a low voice. You're less than the lowest spirit. Let the half-bloods go.
Unspoken words drifted between us. He wanted me to get out, save myself, if the two of us couldn't take down whichever army Fionn had been gathering. But until it was shown to be impossible, he'd go along with my original plan, and rescue Roseanne and the other surviving half-fairies. Warmth filled my blood, steadied my hands. I wasn't alone. Not this time. And Fionn was weakened. The ghostly form of Fionn turned to regard the shape of the castle rippling behind the trees.
You can't save them,
he said.
I'm a little surprised a mage lord would risk so much for the offspring of those who did so much damage to your own realm, but humans have always confused me. You're here, instead of protecting your own.
I'm here with Ivy, Vance said to him. And you're stalling, I added to Fionn. Throw it at me. Whatever monster you have guarding this place. Let me get it over with. I'm not scared of you.
No, you aren't, said Fionn. Yet. You. Kill them.
He spoke to Roseanne. The words vibrated in the air. A vow. She's bound by a vow. Run and hide! I yelled at her. So help me. She'd killed her father, killed others, yet she'd been manipulated, like every other half-fairy, thanks to the Banshee and Fionn. But nobody could disobey a fairy vow. Roseanne screamed, her hands extending into talons as the transformation took hold of her. Jagged black wings sprouted from her back, turning her into some kind of crow-human hybrid, with tears dripping down her still human face. Then she leaped at me. I threw a magical shield in front of Vance and me in defense. The blue light remained around my sword, buzzing in my ears like a swarm of agitated bees at Fionn's presence. But killing Roseanne would be playing into his hands.
Stalling, Ivy, goaded Fionn.
Nah, just deciding who to kill first. My blade glowed brighter, feeding on the pain of the dead, and my magic longed to burst free and obliterate Fionn. Blue light gathered around my hands, and I aimed the attack over the shield, right at the Banshee. She screamed, high and loud, her own death knell ringing through the trees long after my strike severed her head from her neck. Her body half transformed as she died, talons flailing and turning into hands. Roseanne screamed in terror, her face distorted and her body tensed. She was fighting the vow. Don't let him control you, I said. You can't fight me. You'll die. Maybe I want to die. It'll only make me stronger. You aren't like the Banshee. Once you're dead, that's it. Fionn doesn't lie. Not like the others. She struck out, colliding with my shield again. Who'd you rather believe? A ghost and a freakish half-monster spawn of a death goddess, or me?
Did you hear her, mage?
Fionn said, delight resounding through his voice.
She's repulsed by shape-shifting. Did she ever tell you she finds your form repellent?
Shut the hell up, I snarled, using my magic shield to toss Roseanne aside. I didn't want to kill her, even now, but she seemed determined to make a martyr of herself. I'd start by saving the people who actually wanted to be saved. If I could get rid of Fionn. So help me, I'd do some damage one way or another. I gave in to the rage beating inside me, and launched myself at him in a frenzy of blue light. My sword should have impaled his chest, but instead a ghostly hand latched onto my wrist.
It'll take a little time for my harbinger to be reborn. Care to join me in the meantime?
Let go! I twisted my wrist. Pain shot up my arm, and a snapping sound rang through my head. Holy shit! How could a ghost break my arm? Eyes watering with pain, I attempted to wrench my hand away from him again. My skin tingled as my healing power kicked in. Why are you so obsessed with me? I ground out. I'm taken. Fionn bared his teeth.
Being smart with me won't work. I've lived a very long time, Ivy.
Vance closed in behind him. His claws gleamed crimson, and the deadly look in his eyes made even me shiver, half passing out with pain as I was. Then why not die? I asked. What do you people want to live forever for, anyway? I'd have thought you'd get bored.
Why not die? Because I have 1,000 lives I haven't lived yet, and I will take them all. My talisman might be gone, but magic can't be destroyed. My magic is in my spirit, and will follow me no matter which new body I take.
You aren't getting a new body. He laughed.
You still speak like you have any power to influence me, Ivy, yet you refuse to stand by my side.
I'm not standing with you, nor any other she who stand with you this time. If there's anyone left after the mage lords killed them—
There are many,
he said with a smile.
And I remember them all.
They're alive. My heart thumped against my ribcage as a familiar terror took root inside me. The other she-lords, the ones who'd led the invasion. They'd survived? Had the witches, or whoever imprisoned Fionn, done the same to the others, rather than killing them?
You're lying, Vance growled at my side. You were imprisoned during the invasion, not after.
Thank you, Vance. Which means you didn't see it all, I said. Of course. I'd let Fionn's goading get to me, forgetting he was a liar, whether he had his memories or not. Whoever imprisoned you wouldn't have let you stick around to see the fates of every member of your army.
At least one of the she who fought alongside you was killed, Vance added. I heard from witnesses afterwards, and I personally know people who killed several others, or watched the mage lords kill them.
I glanced at him out of the corner of my eye. He'd never mentioned that before, based on our mutual understanding not to talk about the horrors we'd witnessed during the invasion. He had said Lady Harper had killed she personally, and more would have been killed in the battle with the mage lords.
Oh yes, mage lord.
Fionn's mouth twisted into a cruel smile.
I remember it well. They did put up a valiant fight. For humans. Pity.
You're trying to distract us, I interrupted. If any of your she friends did survive, I doubt they'd be happy with you possessing their bodies.
Do you really think I know so little about the power of death over life? It's my entire existence, Ivy. For the last time, I'm offering you the choice. Stand with me, or watch your realm collapse into nothingness.
Get fucked, I said in answer. Still laughing, Fionn's ghostly form disappeared into smoke, and the bottom dropped out of the world again. Magic swirled around Vance and me,
and I grabbed his hand before we toppled off the sheer cliff which had replaced the forest. My mind reeled. Calder had been more dangerous as a ghost than a human with a body. Theon might be the same, but if he found a new body, equipped with the same powers as before, a second invasion would be on the way. And it sounded like he already knew what he was looking for. I closed my eyes and swiftly pulled us both over the veil. Our time in death lasted only seconds. We fell through nothingness onto the field, rain pelting down from the grey sky, and the sound of birdsong in the air. We'd made it into the mortal world. Too bad we were screwed. Chapter 15. He's searching for a new body, I said to the grey sky. He's powerful. Too powerful for a regular mortal body, and I doubt he'd want to possess a half-fairy either. No, he'll want a pure fairy. And if he has his memory back, he'll know exactly where to find one. We have to warn Summer and Winter.
Quentin,
said Vance immediately.
He's speaking to Summer right now.
Yeah. I pushed to my knees, reeling from the aftermath of moving between realms. Is anyone here? Drake? The fire mage ran towards us across the wet grass, hood pulled up against the rain.
Are you really Ivy?
What? Yeah, of course I am. I looked at Vance, then back at Drake. What happened? Drake looked like he hadn't slept for a week. Stubble shadowed his face, and dark circles were under his eyes.
What happened is there are shapeshifter fairies all over town, and you've been missing. I did tell you we'd return within a day, said Vance.
A day? Drake exploded. It's been 3 days. It's a good job you told me where you were going, because I've been fending off concerned phone calls from other mages across the country. The Mage Lord can't just vanish off the face of the earth. But how? I got to my feet. 3 days. We weren't there more than a couple of hours. Though from the way my body wanted to collapse, it seemed longer.
What happened with Half-Blood territory?
Asked Vance, shaking wet grass from his coat.
Did the council meet again? I led a group to Half-Blood territory in case you'd got yourselves lost, or the Veil spat you out in the wrong place. Their leaders, they're gone.
I know, I said. That's why we went into the Grey Veil in the first place. But we ran into a snag. Wait, is the chief, the last one, still in jail?
How the hell am I supposed to know? I've combed the whole bloody city for the pair of you, in the pouring rain most of the time. And might I remind you, I don't have a teleporting ability. Ivy Lane, this mess has your name written all over it.
I don't get it. Time didn't pass that quickly the last time I was there. But it clearly had. There hadn't been so many grey clouds in the sky when we'd left, and the grass was soaking wet, like I'd laid in a swamp. I wiped mud off my hand and onto my jeans.
You're supposed to be an expert on the bloody fairies, said Drake.
As for you, Vance Colton, approximately 25 major council members from across the country want to speak to you. Vance began to walk back to the manor.
That can wait. We need to put a security plan in place. We're facing numerous threats from the Grey Veil.
Have you seen Quentin? I asked Drake.
No. Thought you fired him, Vance. Or you went off to Faerie together, for all I knew. He promised to bring a contingent from the summer court here. I had the impression it wouldn't take this long,
said Vance. Yeah, I muttered. He didn't get into trouble, did he?
I hope not,
said Vance.
Because Summer and Winter need to know about this development.
I tried to hint to Theon that Summer's on our side, but he probably didn't believe me, I said.
Or he doesn't think they're a threat, said Vance. What fairy would believe the word of a ghost?
The mages had better believe me. I'm not having a repeat of Calder. I sighed.
I need to call Isabel. Lucky I told her we were going to Faerie.
Call her,
said Vance.
I'll update the council. They might ask to hear from you, but I need to ensure I didn't miss any new developments which might be linked to Fionn or the Banshee. Drake, what did you say about shapeshifter fairies? Half-bloods are leaving their territory in droves, said Drake. As you requested, we sent mages out to make sure they weren't in trouble. I don't know everything that went down on their territory. I've been too busy trying to find the pair of you. Oh, and the necromancers are in the shit too.
Seriously?
Tell me everything when the whole council is assembled, said Vance. I'm calling a private meeting.
And I'm calling Isabel, I added, pulling out my phone. I'll check on the coven. Then we need to gather and make a plan.
Yes, we do. Did you say Fionn was behind this crap? Asked Drake. I thought he was dead.
I didn't hear Vance's response. I pulled back, clicking Isabel's number on my phone screen. Hey, Isabel, I said. Sorry I didn't call. Vance and I just got back. The sound of her releasing a breath. I hope so. Did you find her? Yeah, that's kind of the problem, I said. Our little friend double-crossed us, but it was Fionn's doing. He's a wraith, but he's looking for a new body to be reborn into. So if you have any leads on where a super-powerful fairy warrior might be buried, I'd really love to know them. I don't, but I thought something weird was going on with the Vale. 2 necromancers died yesterday. Shit. Who? Nobody you know. They've been having issues communicating with the dead over the last few days, so a couple of people volunteered to investigate, and they didn't make it back. Damn. It could only be Fionn. We need to find out what chaos the Banshee left in Half-Blood territory. Did the Half-Bloods come to you for help? Yeah, I've been dealing with that the last few days, said Isabel. Quite a few of them don't want to come near the coven because they think we'll corrupt them with our human magic. I rolled my eyes. Really? I've heard it 5 times today alone. The people staying in Francine's place are all young families who are absolutely terrified of what the Banshee did. They're not on her side. Good. My shoulders slumped. It's completely shit. Roseanne was manipulated anyway. Fionn and the Banshee used her to get at me. There's nobody else in my flat. Don't worry. Just Rick. I've heard stories all over town of bird shapeshifters attacking half-bloods who tried to run away from their territory. Furies, I said. They're back too. That's why the mercenaries were killed. Fionn ordered Roseanne to set the Furies on her own father. Isabel's breath caught. That's sick. Fionn made her. Or the Banshee. Is she still here? I killed her, I said. Roseanne disappeared, but it sounds like there are other half-bloods trapped over there. But our priority, we have to stop Fionn. He wants a body at any cost. It'll be a she-lord. I'm guessing at least some of them were imprisoned in the Between Realm. We can't check every spirit line in the country, but Fionn can get anywhere. Whoa, said Isabel. Calm down. It's terrifying, all right. But he can't move far without a body, right? And wasn't he trapped under an invocation? The others will be too, right? Yeah, but he broke free himself. Well, Calder did it for him. And I still don't know how. I sank into the nearest seat, tired beyond belief. Like I really had skipped 3 days and had all the sleep I'd missed crash on me at once. He's a ghost, said Isabel. Powerful or not, he's locked by the veil and can't affect this realm. If he does materialize, there's no way the necromancers won't notice. Maybe he's the one who killed them. Can't be. If he was with you the whole time. Look, I'll figure out some likely spots for the she to be hidden, but whoever buried him must have considered he might wake up one day. They can't have made it easy for him to find his buddies, I said, nodding. At least, I'd say so. But I don't have a clue who did seal him away. It might be anyone. It might be Quentin's court. Right. I need to get hold of the slippery little bastard. The faint sound of a doorbell ringing in the background. "Rick's here," Isabel said. "He's stopping by with an update on the necromancers. I'll talk to you in a bit." "Yep. I need to check on the half-fairies and make sure they haven't broken anything else. But I'll try to stop by later." "Sure thing, Ivy. Be careful." I stood and went to find Vance. He and Drake were in Vance's office with Wanda, who looked terrified. At least she was back on her feet. "The half-fairy was in the manor when I was attacked." I winced, properly opening the door to announce my presence. "I'm sorry. I was an idiot to trust her. I won't believe any more half-fairy sob stories. Count on it."
"We aren't letting any more half-fairies in here, but I can see some of the council latching on to the security issue and refusing to move on," said Vance. "What we need is to anticipate where Fionn might strike. I'm ordering teams of mages to prepare all our possible shelters and send out a general emergency warning."
"The necromancers are having issues too," I added. "2 of them died. I think we should be preparing for undead too. And ghosts. And all assorted nasties." "What?" said Wanda. "I get that it's only been a few hours for you, and Fionn just threatened you, but no other mages have been attacked. I've been stuck here on bed rest the whole time. But I'll go out patrolling if there's somewhere you want me to be."
"No," said Vance. "There might be she attacking by the day's end. It's too risky. I want you to search our archives for our records on the invasion. We're looking for clues about which she were involved."
"Of course, it'd help if we actually had someone in the court," I added, with a meaningful look at Vance.
He got it. Yes, it would.